Today is a great day. I finally get to Batista bomb this damn series. Attack on Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin is one of the worst things I have ever seen ever. Writing this, we are days away from the 4-year anniversary of this monstrosity. Attack on Titan was never perfect during its serialization, but it maintained relative precision with how the narrative was structured. The final 13 or so chapters, ironically, did irreparable damage to this series. Today, we're going to discuss this damage in extreme detail. I aim for this to be the final time I ever talk about this bitch-ass series. I have made multiple videos about this terrible ending, and after each of them, I felt a lingering disappointment of something being shallow or not ideal. I believe this video is what was missing. The video will be structured tighter than an 18-year-old Amish girl. Despite its length, we will hit 3 essential beats, those being 1, an iceberg deciphering almost every single problem this ending has, 2, a full debunk of popular defenses for this ending, 3, addressing counter arguments and dumb attempts to defend and justify the ending. The video will be enlightening, I promise. We will be diving deeper than Phelps into Attack on Titan. I will not be doing any recaps or typical analysis of characters. We should all be familiar with the series because the manga ended 4 years ago and the anime is like 18 months old or something. As a prologue to the entire video, we will examine historia and Eren's characters individually and how they were handled in the end. We will be speaking as objectively as possible during this examination. Please enjoy my Dexter Morgan killing of this narrative. A lot of discourse surrounding the ending will always fall back to Eren and Historia. Eren is the most divisive piece of the puzzle, while Historia is the least. Everyone has an opinion on these two, no matter how benign or out-fucking-rageous. I firmly believe these two characters are objectively indefensible. No interpretation you have will ever save them from how they were written in the past compared to now. These two characters do not make sense, which is entirely ironic because they easily could have under a competent writer. I won't call this an analysis or anything because I will simply go over these characters and how they do not work with a basic understanding of storytelling and mystery writing. This prologue will be a fantastic way of showing you how Isayama deliberately ruined the story. But wait, Deku opioids. Why do you say Isayama ruined it intentionally? Please wait until the end of the video. In chapter 107, it is revealed that Zeke presented the island with a plan to sustain itself. The 50-year plan required Historia to have as many children as possible and make them eat the beast titan holder. Chapter 108 tells us she got pregnant with the farmer and Yelena likely told her to do so. Obviously, that is wrong. In fact, everything the MPs say is wrong. Historia never got pregnant to save Zeke. We see this objectively. Zeke has his wine plan in case he is taken in. As well, Yelena never told Historia to get pregnant. Nobody told her to get pregnant to delay the military's plan. The idea of Historia getting pregnant for a plan is wrong because Zeke has never shown a legitimate interest in Historia to where she was essential to any plan he made. Eren also does not want her to get pregnant at all. He explicitly states this during the conversation that he will not allow Historia to birth sacrifices for the island. The entire pregnancy plan interpretation immediately falls apart because Eren is telling her that there is no plan to get pregnant. As well, Zeke was never any real danger and the two of them do not care about each other. Historia also consistently looks miserable around Chusaku. Historia was never shown to love this farmer 1%. Isayama focuses on facial expressions way too much for him to show Historia looking constantly annoyed and upset whenever she is with this guy. Because we have zero proof of Historia liking Chusaku, it is impossible to say Historia loved the farmer and had a child out of love. More evidence against this is the fact that Eren was with her when she met up with the farmer. Eren would not have been with her if she loved the farmer and got pregnant soon after. Not only is that weird, Eren's inclusion will be entirely unnecessary and redundant. 139 tries to paint the two as in love, but that is entirely uncredible because these two had 4 years to get married and etc. I would also assume Historia would want to get married because she knows how miserable it is to be a bastard / child out of wedlock, but that's beside the point. The point is the final chapter doesn't substantiate this development as it easily could have happened in the 4 years they had together. Moreover, Historia's entire character wasn't given anything to do. It reads like like Isayama forgot about her. Every member of the 104th has something to do. Flock is the antagonist, John goes on a serious moral struggle, Mikasa is God apparently, and even Connie has an entire subplot with Falco. Historia is the only person to be completely irrelevant. It is not acceptable that she was written in this way. Expectations were high for Historia's involvement with the endgame, and Isayama managed to not deliver. It's like he became a dasher just to never accept orders. Another note to make is how this is about the writing. She wouldn't get pregnant without reason. She didn't get pregnant out of love because there isn't any evidence of that. She also didn't get pregnant out of a plan because the story contradicts this. If the Historia got pregnant because she wanted to, then there has to be substantial development for us to follow her motivations and inevitably see her conclusion and payoff of living with the family. This is evidently unavailable because she has less screen time than fucking Yelena. I must say this again, Historia also did not get pregnant to delay the military's plan and save herself. Zeke had the wine plan, so there was no plan the military could ever do to make Historia eat him. As well, Historia was never told by anyone to get pregnant in the first place. Stop saying this. To think she got pregnant to save herself, you must think that after she heard Eren say the military was going to turn her into a Titan, she got so scared that she had a baby immediately. This is in spite of the fact that Historia was fine with being sacrificed, as well as Eren literally saying in the same conversation he won't allow it to happen. Historia did not get pregnant to save herself. She was protected by both Zeke and Eren indirectly and directly. Having a baby simply to save herself would be the biggest character assassination I've ever seen. She would be no different than her own parents by having a child according to a plan and for selfish and greedy reasons. Kenny literally told Historia that she was born out of someone else's misery. After hearing that, she would never do something like have a child just to save herself. Some might fallaciously say that Historia was never important and she only has something to do for a single arc. This is just plain wrong. Every character in the 104th is important. Moreover, Eren cares about Historia very much and has multiple inner monologues just about her, and especially values her strength and state of mind. A character that inspires a main character is never unimportant. That is like saying Shanks is unimportant, or Shrisha Elric is unimportant, or Jing. It is frankly embarrassing. By now, I hope you understand that there is no interpretation fitting this character. Nothing we are presented is congruent with the conclusion of the conflict nor the story. There are more holes in this character than Swiss cheese. I just keep moving forward until all my enemies are destroyed. If you don't fight, you can't win, because I was born into this world. The character who said all these things simply lied down and died. Eren in chapter 139 simply just allows himself to be killed. Hotly contested for the last 4 years, this plot point makes no sense for multiple reasons. In the same chapter, Eren says he moved forward for Mikasa's conclusion. He also says he learned all of this at chapter 90 in the medal ceremony. This is impossible, however. Eren in chapter 131 in its own head says that he will kill everyone. He is not referring to the area in Marley that he is currently in. The story affirms him talking about the entire world, but Eren also thinks of the walls versus the outside. Eren was going to destroy the entire world, not 80% it for Mikasa. He will not think the way that he did in 131 if 80% was his plan since chapter 90. This angle is just impossible. Some people see this, then rationalize and pivot to he was going for 100%, but he then changed his motivations when he unlocked the Founder's powers. This is more plausible if plausible meant retarded. A lot of people believe this idea that Eren saw the future again when unlocking the Founder. However, this places the story in an either-or dilemma. Either Eren saying in 123, I will snuff out all their lives, is a complete lie to the entire world just for the hell of it because it benefited nobody and Armin already knew what he was doing, or the writer lied to the audience by making the audience believe in a certain outcome and motivation. The only option is the latter. The writer lied to the reader. Very simple. How, you ask? The end of chapter 130 has Eren in his own head say that he will destroy the entire world. The way this scene is written, the writer intended for the audience to learn pieces of Eren's motivations, and it heavily suggests facets of the same idea, which all revolve around a full rumbling. More pertinent, Eren did not change his motivations after gaining the Founder. If he did, then he would not be saying a full rumbling in his own head in chapter 130. But wait, Eren's motivations did change in chapter 122. When Eren connected to the founder, he became 4D and started seeing the future and the past at the same time. Eren's motivations did change in 122, but this just adds layers to the writer lying. The writer lies to the reader in 123 by writing Eren saying a full rumbling. We know for a fact he saw the future again in 122 because the founder's powers are 4D, even though there are more problems with this that we'll get into in time. Eren changing his motivations in 122 makes chapters 130 and 131 pump fake air balls in the story. These chapters showcase Eren's original motivations and tell the story of him resolving his guilt and ambition for doing the rumbling. By showing the audience these flashbacks, it sets the expectation of the full rumbling. It is just tricking the reader since his motivations have already changed in 122. Do you see how this is just multifaceted ass? This is the first thick layer of Eren's character making no sense. We know for a fact Eren saw the future, but what the story says does not make any sense due to it contradicting his monologues and motivations stated to historia. As well, any other time he saw the future ends up being contradicted by again what he says or the author straight up lying. Naturally, we'll dive more into Eren later, for he is the most complex ass turd ever, but I feel like we can only talk about him through Family Guy cutaways.
Stewie gets hurt, like Fozzie Bear when he went to Saudi Arabia.
It's good to worship Allah, cause I used to worship Summer. Waka waka. I once knew a guy who was so Arab.
How Arab was he?
He was so Arab that everybody liked him, and there was nothing funny about him at all.
First things first, this is not my iceberg, nor do I plan on plagiarizing and stealing. Full credit to the guy who made this, as well as his channel, and everything about him will be in the description. I'm using this iceberg to shed light on every single problem with the ending and adding my own problems that the iceberg doesn't cover. During his Reddit post, he also wrote why the problems are problems, and surprise surprise, I have a couple problems with his explanations that prompted me to make this section of the video. If anyone else does a video one-to-one with this iceberg, then it'll be more refreshing since I have my own sort of unique takes and thoughts on what makes these problems actually problems. I will say though, this guy and his Reddit posts are extremely good and help for engaging critically and understanding how these things are problems. To be honest, this is the lowest of low-hanging fruits. It is frankly impossible to have this woman walk across an entire country and swim across an ocean. We know for a fact she did, because Armin and her say that Eren will not be allowed to have a proper burial, which he was actually given. The rumbling should have emptied the land and just have rotting corpses. If a single human walks through a room full of corpses, they will catch some type of super AIDS, let alone an entire country. Even more, how the fuck is Mikasa even allowed onto Paradise? We know Jaegerists and Paradisians do not fuck with anyone in the Alliance based on 139's conversations and Connie's statement. Therefore, whenever Mikasa pulled up after being covered in blood, water, and smelling like 60 mgs of bounce that ass, the Jaegers just allowed her to plant Eren's head with no resistance. I am assuming such a thing, but there is zero evidence of the opposite. This extends to Mikasa's attendant on Paradise. She's one of the main members of the Alliance who was seen killing Jaegers, as well came back with the head of the Messiah of the Eldian people. Everything concerning Mikasa being on Paradise and getting to Paradise makes no sense. This is only the first layer of the iceberg, by the way. AOT when it comes to being layered ass.
Here we go. I'm about to make myself retarded.
So as the original Reddit post says, people say the final battle was staged by Eren, but this is only half true. Ymir was in control of the ancient titans as Armin states. Eren has limited control of this final battle, and I think this is shown when Ymir clearly assists Zeke and Armin in getting out of paths. This is obviously contentious because nothing is actually clearly explained or elucidated upon. Levi breaks his leg and Connie almost falls into the pit of doom, so the titans were definitely trying to kill them or something like that. The thing is, it is just horribly written because it isn't believable, despite there being evidence that they are trying. It is an Ouroboros of dick where the Titans are clearly trying to kill them, but the writing looks like they aren't. An important facet is that the Alliance are gigabuffed by every single plot convenience ever. Remember when Levi in RTS needed another ODM gear because he ran out of gas? Remember when the plot of Tross revolves around getting gas because Mikasa and the team ran out? Remember when Zeke, Bertold, and Reiner made an entire plan to exhaust the scouts and play a battle of attrition because they basically have no way to sustain themselves? Yeah, I miss those days too when Isayama had a fucking brain. Instead, in the final battle, the scouts basically have infinite gas and blades, and characters don't even mention these things as limiters. Normally, I wouldn't even consider romances as problems if they don't have significant plot relevance, but I think it's important to highlight how this negatively affects John's character. Similar to Eren and Mikasa, Mikasa always went, oh, right, to John's advances. It rewards crazy nigga behavior and presents a Forrest Gump type of disposition.
Hi, Forrest. I know you just got back from Vietnam and you love me, but I'm gonna go run a train with this group of Black Panthers I just met.
Okay, Jenny.
Hi, Forrest. I know you came all this way to New York to visit me, but I'm gonna go do blow and have sex with a bunch of stockbrokers.
Okay, Jenny.
Hi, Forrest. Now that I have the most contagious and incurable disease known to mankind, I'll finally have pity sex with you.
Okay, Jenny. And I'll mow the grass and raise the AIDS, baby.
Moreover, it trivializes John's characterization. John is constantly depicted as sensible, pragmatic, genuine, and a human character. What type of human character does some bullshit like this? Specifically, what smart, natural-born leader does something like this? It actually feels like the final fuck you from Isayama. One of the last things John says is, "You're creepy for lusting after a married woman." Is it not creepy to go with a woman who has not only never shown any interest in you, but is actively still hung up on their ex who destroyed the world and is now forcing you to defend the island with your dick on one side and your balls on the other? This woman is bringing you to her lover's grave and letting generations of your family be at Hitler's memorial. This is bordering on John character assassination, but we already did that in 139. People might try to argue, "We don't know if that's John," to which I will quote my GOAT. "We don't know if that's Mikasa." Playing this game of "we don't know" has always and will be disingenuous at best. We all know it's fucking John. If it wasn't John, nobody would even be saying it's John. Nobody would be arguing it's John if it wasn't him. If it was Connie or some other person or some other candidate, we would just be saying, oh, it could be them. We know from common sense that it's these characters. If we don't know that is John, then we also don't know that it's Mikasa, or the same tree that Eren was buried at, or Eren's grave, or the lady there is even dead, or if that's even fucking parodies. Do you know how ridiculous it sounds to say we don't know? Exactly. The end of the past chapters has Zeke seemingly defeated by Eren and stuck in paths. However, Zeke's Titans were still a thing and killing indiscriminately. The readers all thought this would be explained or have some plot revelation associated with it. Instead, it was just a thing that happened and was explained through the grapevine. It's not exactly a problem or a plot hole, but it's weird that Eren just left Titans there that could kill his friends and followers. This is one of the most layered plot holes I think I've ever seen in fiction. This borders on 9/11 was an inside job type of layered nonsense. We all know Falco turns into a bird beast titan. There are more forward reasons why this is bad, like it being conveniently 10 minutes after Hange died because they needed to protect the plane, but this breaks Marley's world building. For 100 years, Marley has been experimenting with the titans, the beast titan more specifically. How the fuck did they not know about a flying fucking titan? Like actually, it was genuinely lost to time. One of the commander dickheads say that they don't have any flying titans. How does Marley, who has been in war with Eldia since fucking forever and who's been in control of majority of the titans for a century, not know about a flying titan? This literally makes no sense. One of the most pertinent problems with his titan is how it makes other titans redundant and trivial. The jaw titan is small and agile. How agile is a fucking bird? The beast titan isn't useful in war? Well, our bird is amazing at carrying things and dodging shit. The cart titan is great at carrying shit and having endurance, while our bird can carry people easily with thunder spears and ODM gear, and he has infinite shifts and endurance as well. Annie could barely run halfway to the wall from the beach, while Falco can fly across an entire fucking continent. Overall, this is a horrendous example of world building. Marley looks like they didn't try hard enough, Titan abilities are all undermined, and the Alliance are saved because of fucking contrivances. Mikasa and Ymir has always been the most contentious talking point concerning the finale. Since this is my magnum opus of a critique, I will dive Johnny Sins deep into this talking point. The first stage of Mikasa and Ymir's relationship is how there is no development to such a thing. If Mikasa and Ymir were the ultimate dynamic in connection to solve this 2,000-year-long curse upon humanity, there should have been at least foreshadowing. If you want to argue that bits and pieces are foreshadowed, foreshadowing is not a substitute for development. It never has and never will. Eren's connection to Ymir is foreshadowed and developed since the beginning of the story. Ymir sent Eren a message only he could hear as being the man who fights for freedom. The royal family specifically is a topic in the story that targets Eren and is consistently fleshed out. The self-serving pacifists and cannibalistic royals Eren fully rejects for reasons the audience understands and is made aware of. Past as well is foreshadowed thematically and literally within Eren. Mikasa has zero connection to any of the things I just brought up. Mikasa has zero development into any of the things intrinsic to Ymir, as well as not have a relationship with her. The entire series, we don't know Mikasa's take on anything. Her views on parodies, her views on parody survival, her views on the Jaegerists, her views on Zeke and the Warriors. She's just a blank sheet of paper that Ymir saw and said, yup, she's the one. It is absurdly contrived from a writing perspective, to say the least. It is absurdly contrived from a writing perspective to draw this last minute connection. It feels like Ymir saw the future, realized Mikasa was the one to stop Eren somehow, then Ymir just said, yeah, I'll be free then. The writer just wrote it a certain way regardless of it being natural or making sense. This is especially apparent when there is no in-story reason for why Ymir chose Mikasa. Isayama had the chance to explain and purposely didn't shoot, telling the audience that it was a necessary evil to tell the story that he wanted to. It even reads so unnatural as well. Eren touched her literally one time, understood her love for King Fritz, her deep struggle with love, her painful life of slavery, and even how her children ate her and began the cycle he wanted to stop, but he didn't understand why Mikasa was chosen? The fuck?
Shut the fuck up!
This comes off as a writer not understanding the conclusion to his conflict. What's more is that 2 chapters ago, Zeke was glazing Eren for being able to understand Ymir. Apparently not, as the nigga that was on her side didn't know what the bitch was actually feeling. I think Isayama knew there was nothing he could say, so he just said nothing. It's like when you're a kid and you know you fucked up and your parents are asking you to explain yourself, but you just stay quiet before you make them even madder. Honestly, I respect Isayama just a little bit for doing this. If he would have said any reason possible, even his most loyal fans would have flipped their shit. This is all because Mikasa and Ymir's situations are not at all similar in the slightest. Ymir was a literal slave, forced to do physical work and carry out ambitions and expectations by the entire world. She propagated titans from her own slave mindset imbued into her from her adolescence. This is the worldly state of affairs in which God was nothing but a child looking for freedom. She freed the pigs because she wanted to vicariously experience freedom. Mind you, Eren compared the people inside the walls to cattle. This is certainly not the case for Mikasa. Mikasa's character was about realizing who Eren was and internally dealing with the ramifications. Mikasa was not struggling with any burdens or roles or expectations she went through. It was all extremely personal, which means Isayama's bitch ass is trying to draw a parallel to mental freedom and physical freedom. I should not have to explain why mental freedom is different from physical freedom. You can be mentally free while having your physical freedom hampered. This is why they are not the same. Mikasa is not the same as Ymir simply because their situations are entirely linked to different concepts. Ymir was a literal slave, not a slave to love or emotions or Eren or whatever the fuck. Mikasa was a slave to love or dick or Eren or whatever. That's not real slavery though. This is the main reason why their connection is entirely divisive. It is simply because it's incongruent and doesn't make any sense. Ymir's situation isn't even unique, by the way. Arcs like Grisha and Zeke are infinitely better handled and fulfilling. Grisha confirming to Zeke that he is loved despite his abusive childhood is an infinitely better handled sentiment. It is a message about love toppling abuse. We have to believe that Ymir was watching people for 2,000 years and could not learn how to let go of her abuser from this. Even more, we didn't even learn what Mikasa did. Even more, Mikasa never moved on from her own lover. Even more. The only connection Mikasa has was randomly said and resolved in the literal last possible final second, which turned out to be a plot hole because the power of the Titans do not work on arguments. This one is rather shallow and speaks to the nonsense of the ending overall more than anything. Eren has always been characterized by his will all the time, from chapter 1 to chapter 121. 139 literally removes this and forces him to lose his mind in the laziest way ever that is not foreshadowed or anything, just lazily revealed in a matter-of-fact random text bubble. This should not be a debate anymore. A lot of people like to use the anime for viewing AOT since Eren makes a lot more sense to them regarding the conversation, so let's use that. Mikasa says, Armin,
you got your memories back too, right?
You got your memory back too, right? Of when Eren came to visit us. This sentence directly implicates Mikasa as being in the same shoes as Armin. I hope we realize Armin can be affected by the power of the Titans. Mikasa cannot. People usually say one of two things that is completely arbitrary and nonsensical. Either she was set into an alternate timeline, or she was just in paths. Number one, you have to prove alternate timelines even exist in the canon source material for AOT. Once you prove that, you lose the argument because in this alternate timeline, Eren doesn't even have the Founder's powers to begin with. Meaning, Eren is simply making shit up to manipulate Mikasa to get her to kill him. Second, Mikasa should not be able to go inside paths in that specific way. If you want to argue that she's technically Eldian, therefore she can go inside paths, sure. She should not be able to be forcibly pulled into paths by the founding Titan's power. The founder makes Titans in paths so she can't inherit a Titan nor be turned into one. This stands to reason that she is an anomaly inside of paths and that the founder does not have control over her. Therefore, taking her into paths forcibly betrays these rules. Mikasa had her memory manipulated. This is not a debate. Pretty obvious. Why is this twist even a thing? If you remove it from the story, genuinely, what do you lose? We already know by this point Eren is a slave to Ymir and fate and the founding Titan powers. Eren literally says he had to do it and drove this point further. What was the point literally? Like, what did this serve to accomplish? Years later, like literally 4 years later, I don't have a fucking clue. Nobody does. Like, obviously he didn't want to. Fucker literally says I had to, meaning he was forced. Some might say he didn't lead her directly to Dina or that Ymir was the one driving the Titan. All of that doesn't even matter. Some of us might be familiar with the Mikasa Azumabito stuff that was set up in chapter 107. This came out of literally thin air and was used as an attempt to give Mikasa more relevance and stake in the plot. The Azumabito are extremely important figures for the future of the story, as we all know. We all expected some type of arc regarding Mikasa and the Azumabito. Kiyomi literally dubbed her as a princess and the savior and hero to the nation. This never comes to play again, however. I've said this so many times before. Narrative setups deserve payoff. Even doo-doo ass wipe series are still aware of this. If you set up one of the main characters being this royal figure within a huge country that we need an alliance from, you need to make that relevant to the story and main plot somehow. Instead, this just ended up showing how much of a Mary Sue Mikasa is. What's more is that Mikasa being a member of the Azumabito is the only reason the 50-year plan was even posited and why Zeke was able to trick Marley and Paradis for so long. Kiyomi explicitly states as much. What we are left with is frankly fucking ridiculous. Mikasa was born with god powers, is the chosen one of the story, and is the last remnant of a lost clan and the heir to the throne. Fan fiction writers can't even make this shit up.
All right, because we all know that no woman anywhere wants to have sex with anyone.
This one is extremely simple and I haven't seen many people argue against it. The main reason why royal blood was needed for the founding Titan was because of Ymir's slavery to the royal king. The only reason was because of this. Frida says to Grisha he won't be able to use the founding Titan if it is stolen from her. When we go inside paths, we see why this is the case. Zeke tells Eren that Ymir is only a slave and only listens to royal blood, and her backstory contextualizes that. When Eren frees her and makes her side with him, the wording is very deliberate. You are no slave, you don't need to serve anyone. You can be the one to choose. Zeke explicitly reminds her of the royal blood in his veins and he is drawn to a mirror as the king. So tell me, after everything I just said, the founder only being used royal blood, Ymir being subservient to royal blood because of the King Fritz, and Eren using no royal blood to convince Ymir to take a side, why would you subsequently need royal blood after all of this? Ymir made her own choice to side with someone without royal blood, so why the fuck would it be needed again? Simply put, everything we're told and shown about royal blood and the founder is contradicted immediately by 122 when Ymir chose Eren. Therefore, following the same rules is entirely retarded. In the past, I did not really care about Kruger and his stance on the rumbling. I always thought the other two were way more egregious. Only recently have I developed a backbone related to Kruger. Kruger supporting the rumbling is an objective retcon. He worked his whole life as a double agent for Eldia's future. Thousands upon thousands of Eldians he murdered and tortured. He said that he searched for freedom and this was the price of it. In order to keep moving forward, he must entrust his mission onto another person. Kruger understood that Eldians were on a grave time limit and something must be done. That something has to be Grisha stealing the founder. When Grisha steals the founder, he literally says this was the moment every attack titan was moving forward toward. By the time Kruger joined the fight, most Eldians were already stomped away. Common sense decrees that if Kruger stopped the rumbling, then he will be dooming all Eldians everywhere. Thereby, his actions of stopping the rumbling contradict his motivations of wanting to save Eldia. If he moved forward so Grisha could take the founder, why would he stop the rumbling? If he sacrificed thousands of Eldians for the future of the Eldian Empire, why would he doom the new Eldians? Kruger likely saw Eren's memories, such as 123, because Grisha used it as a conduit for Eren to see his own memories, and Kruger 100% saw Grisha's memories. Therefore, he saw the least racist group in the least racist country on the least racist continent still want to genocide millions of Eldians on the island. Kruger would not ever do such a thing. It betrays his characterization, motivations, and basic story logic. This issue is definitely more divisive than most, but it stresses the disappointment people feel regarding the ending. Armin was a bum. When we look at the climax to many arcs, Armin plays a huge impact. The peak of his character is reached when in RTS his resolve led to his plan and eventual sacrifice. The problem here is that the expectation Isayama promised was not met. We all expected a good leader and a strategist, at least on Erwin's level. Not in Erwin exactly, but something just as good. However, what was one plan Armin did that was nearly as good as Erwin's female titan or Clash of the Titans plan? People have said to me that he was useful for X reasons, but this is moving the goalpost. Of course Armin is useful, every one of the lines is. We expected a genius and just got a team member. We expected 2008 Kobe and ended up with 2015 Curry. As a thought experiment, pretend Connie ended up getting the Colossal Titan, meaning he would be the one blowing up the port in the nape. Do any of Armin's plans look smart? It basically becomes common sense. Even then, Armin wouldn't change that much if he didn't have the Colossal. For the better part of the post-time skip, he's shown to be incompetent and reactionary. He reacts to the Jaegers taking over, he reacts to Eren conspiring with Zeke, he reacts to the failure of Hizuru in the Elden Rights meeting, he reacts to the starting of the rumbling, and he never offers any answer. He is caught jacking off in front of a crystal when they have no time to waste. He is shot in the mouth during the port fight and then is completely AFK. Go to the ending where he convinces the Marleyans in the military not to shoot. It is an explicit parallel to chapter 11, but this scene is retarded. It is a textbook appeal to ignorance. Armin is trying to prove that he is not a Titan by saying they're not turning into Titans. That doesn't
Better watch who you're calling a child, Lois, because if I'm a child, then you know what that makes you? A pedophile. And I'll be damned if I'm gonna stand here and be lectured by a pervert.
I shouldn't even have to spell that shit out. It's a terrible argument. Like that, it's the same logic as, have you ever seen Clark Kent and Batman in the same room? Like, it's not real. In the original scene, Armin actually uses his brain. He uses logical statements to keep Eren and them alive. The only reason it doesn't work is because the garrison are scared shitless. This scene that was made to lift Armin on a pedestal is ironically an embarrassing tribute for his IQ. Armin is completely useless outside of doing common sense generic things like blowing shit up or organizing a group. As a comparison to the dog we saw in pre-time skip, chapter 13, he took a gamble and woke up Eren from his dream and inspired him to change and push forward. In chapter 22, he realized the female titan was a shifter and not an abnormal titan, further complementing his analysis skills. He was the one to stop the female titan as well. He deduced it was Annie and made multiple plans to stop her from leaving, practically all in the moment. He also made the entire Shiganshina plan. He thought if titans can harden, then that's most likely what the walls are made out of, also positing that Eren could do the same thing to seal Shiganshina. Look at this character in the first 40 chapters in 10 volumes. He showcases an insurmountable amount of intelligence and IQ feats. only for him to be handed a victory and be the most reactionary character possible. I named this problem the IQ tax refund because it genuinely feels like he got a tax refund of the pre-time skip, and the post-time skip, he's in credit card debt. Firstly, the author himself has said a million times that their relationship is not like that. Secondly, Mikasa's perception of Eren is a one-to-one with Kasuga's obsession with Griffith. There are three main arguments to show this development as lazy and tired pandering. 1. Mikasa doesn't like anything about Eren. The only thing she actually cares for is the symbol Eren represents. That symbol being family and the scarf representing that. This is shown directly in the manga. Mikasa believes Eren is being controlled and he will never endanger innocent people because he is a kind person. We the audience know very well that Eren will endanger innocents and even his friends for his goals. Mikasa refuses to acknowledge this because she wants the idealized version of Eren inside her head. What part of Eren have I been seeing? Eren is inherently a violent person, and Mikasa refuses to see this and even makes delusional situations and obsessions to cope with these ideas. Luis as a character is Mikasa's Mikasa, someone who devoted their entire life to their savior figure. The ironically great writing from Isayama is the fact that Luis misunderstood Mikasa's actions the same way Mikasa misunderstood Eren's. When she was saved, Luis thought it was a testament to the power one can hold when Mikasa's actions were entirely based on kindness and empathy. The clear arc is that Mikasa realizes Eren is not kind and moves on from him, unlike Luis, who thought Mikasa was equally power hungry and died on their deathbed without any closure. Further hammering home this parallel is how they just blatantly did not understand their saviors. One of the reasons Luis joined the Jaegers was because she thought Mikasa was going to be there. Isayama was able to write these nuances and subtleties like this, then write fanfic like that. Eren doesn't give a fuck about Mikasa. Facetious sentence obviously, because he even cared about the random dickhead Thomas and Trost. Chapter 50 scarf scene was not Eren telling her that she is the most special person ever. Mikasa further did not understand him during this scene. Mikasa gave up and was trying to comfort Eren with their loss. Eren would never surrender, however. Even more, the entire time that was happening, Eren was staring at Armin. Even more, no one ever even mentioned this scene. If it was this important to these characters, you would think somebody would mention it somehow. They only say, Eren, you control Titans, instead of, hey Mikasa, what was that about? I wonder. This is a great segue to one of their final interactions being 123. Eren asks Mikasa, what is he to her? An important nuance is that Eren's question implies he is confused and puzzled by her behavior. He views her actions as weird and awkward, so he asks this. However, that's only the implication. The literal meaning is that Eren is trying to get an answer. Eren is checking if his future memories can be changed in the situation. The entire time he is harping on his future memories, such as perfect timing and not yet. One of the best debunks to these romantic moments is the fact that Eren is looking at his friends unconscious and crying in danger and dying in front of him just to be focused on Mikasa's kiss that would be entirely inappropriate and out of character. He's also harping on his future memories in which he kills millions upon millions of people, and focusing on pussy after his realization is so incredibly weird and chaotically childish. So again, when you analyze the series and find out that Mikasa didn't like anything about Eren, Luis is the perfect parallel to Mikasa, and that Eren never gave a particular fuck about her, it is impossible to call this plot development not a retcon, especially since the characters talk about it like it was always there and nothing new, especially when there are multiple interviews that support these conclusions. A lot of people think that if the writing and presentation was better, then it could work. I disagree with this for fairly obvious reasons. The clear arc for Mikasa that would have been incredibly poetic and realistic is for Mikasa to realize that her quote-unquote family betrays her own values and she must disconnect herself from that. It would have been infinitely better than freedom from love. Keith Shadis told his students to join the Jaegers to protect themselves. He also let himself get beaten up to protect his students from Titans. This is because he cares about his students, which is likely just him caring about the future of Paradis, since the students are just kids, to be honest. Shadis later blows up and kills multiple Jaegers. So fuck the future of the island, fuck your students, fuck being consistent characters, and I think this is more Isayama gaslighting, where he's trying to make the Rumbling the most evil thing ever, but he wrote it towards the only resolution to the story. More on this later, by the way. Chapter 33 in the end of season 1 of the anime introduces Titans in the walls. We all know Titans only move when there's sun out, which is why so many pre-time skip plans take place when it's dark outside. Mikasa seeing the wall Titan and the wall Titan consciously looking back at her tells you that these creatures are alive like any other Titan. This is why it's so weird when we later see that these Titans just become robot drones when royal blood is lost. Naturally, this makes no sense. We had an entire scene dedicated to telling us that the Titans can move normally and are regular Titans. I hate using author statements because Isayama's a hypocrite, as well as death of the author and all that stuff, but Isayama said that the wall Titans turned into humans in chapter 139. This is weird as this just hammers home how they were just regular supersized Titans if they actually were piloted by humans, which means they should not have been straight up unplugged from the wall. They should have been eating and going crazy indiscriminately. One of the biggest pieces of evidence for this is in chapter 89, where Cougar tells Grisha that pure Titans are weapons of mass destruction if they are not given orders by the founding Titan. So Isayama already showed and told us that these guys function just like pure Titans, but in the ending they are literally just robots. Another very important aspect of this is Pastor Nick explicitly telling Han to cover up the Titan so they don't awaken within sunlight. If they weren't really dangerous, then Pastor Nick would not have looked like this. Basically, you cannot look at all this evidence and conclude that this was normal. Even more than that, saying Eren orchestrated it all is a baseless ad hoc. There's no basis for this explanation, and I realize a lot of people are going to rationalize it with a Eren made it this way, but all we know is that he orchestrated Mikasa killing him, basically nothing else. He didn't even know if his friends are going to survive, and he also lost his mind. We can't arbitrarily explain everything away with Eren's bitch-ass god powers. So, in short, Chapter 34 tells us that these wall Titans are regular Titans, and Isayama's statement about 139 contextualizes this. However, when royal blood is lost, they simply stop and are unplugged from the fucking electricity. This is an objective retcon because they were shown to be regular Titans, and we cannot describe Eren's manipulation of the scene because it's not at all implied, it's not at all stated, and as well, Eren was losing his mind during all of that. Eren in the underground scene is at his absolute lowest. Historia then frees him emotionally and metaphorically and shows him a facet to living free and having a life of pride. The most important arc of development he goes through is this, and it concludes with him remembering his mother's word. Remember how integrated all of this truly is. He believes everyone is born free and those who reject that do not matter. Additionally, if you try to take away his freedom, he will not hesitate to take yours. Taking both of these in mind, then his uprising underground scene into account, it is clear to see that even as an enemy of humanity, Eren's life will still have meaning. He would never give up his life for any reason. 139 trying to have it where Eren gave up his dreams for his friend's safety is the biggest contradiction to this. Zeke's arc is retarded and shows not reading that. Let me highlight a key difference between goals and motivations. Goals are simply the direction and an endpoint for a character. Motivations are what fuel that goal. My goal is to lose 30 pounds and the motivation is to look good for the summer. Most people and stories use these things interchangeably, which is generally fine for the most part. However, more three-dimensional characters with nuance staked into their core, it's important to recognize these differences. Within Zeke Yeager especially, Zeke's goal was euthanasia. Zeke's entire stick was freedom and death. This is why he makes such a good parallel to Eren, who believes you're free from the moment you're born. The biggest, and I mean the biggest, distinction is that Eren was born this way, Zeke was made this way. The question everyone should be asking is how he was made that way. His fucking childhood. Isayama stresses the importance of people's childhood upbringing within virtually every character. Grisha losing his sister, Mikasa's kidnappers, Erwin's father, Historia's mother, and even Levi living in the slums. You can literally find examples in almost every key player of the story. Likewise, this is the case for Zeke. The reason he gained such ideals and motivations was because of his own slave childhood. He did not receive the parental love he should have, and as a result became extremely distant from reality. Kusaver ended up taking advantage of Zeke and instilling these ideals inside him. We can see how Zeke's father left him vacant and empty without love, and how his father figure gassed those feelings to propagate his nihilism. The past chapters even allude to these developments. I also allude to this vacancy in his character writing in another video. What we actually get from Zeke is honestly embarrassing. Femboy talks down the ultimate nihilist who's been developing his own ideals ideals for years upon years. Zeke says that there's freedom in death and he accepts Armin's bitch ass enjoyed the little things. It makes sense for the antagonist to be ideologically challenged, but the problem comes in with it not being believable and it being riddled with plot holes we'll get into later. Mind you, Zeke getting talked down is literally in 4 pages of time. AOT chapters are usually 44 pages, meaning that, unless my math is wrong, Zeke fake changed his entire life in 11% of a chapter. Again, Zeke doesn't know who Armin is. They have never spoken before. The idea of worthless little moments still having value is not something exclusive to Armin. In chapter 37, we have an example from Sasha, who's canonically a fucking idiot. Thus by, an idiot's ideal is what converted Zeke in 4 pages. Doesn't that sound fucking ridiculous? The fundamental problem with this arc is the writing being terrible. Zeke gets himself killed by Levi and is portrayed as something good and etc. His nihilism is seemingly quelled, but he still subscribes to the freedom and death mentality. What the hell though? Dude's ideology was defeated, but he's still living that lifestyle. This is literally anti-writing 101. Like, let me bring up an example from One Piece, right? In Alabasta, Luffy shows Crocodile that, hey, having friends is what gives you strength. He loses the fight and loses ideologically, and then when we next see Crocodile, we see him trusting his subordinates, we see him making other exchanges with the group and actually working as a group now. So when the villain is defeated ideologically, he can't still maintain those same ideals or the same principles the ideals are based off of. Properly, Zeke should have to fight his own battle with Grisha and his childhood. Could he forgive Grisha? Does he love his father? Could things have been different without war, titans, and racism? Zeke should never look to affirm death without these answers. It is abhorrent writing that Isayama tried to make this development, but instead falsified many facets of this character in order to bridge this absurd gap in his arc. Zeke is one of the worst parts in the story of AOT because of this writing not being met. He turns into a glorified plot device just so the story can continue. Hey guys, let's introduce Zeke so we can save Reiner. Let's introduce Zeke so we can give Connie a motivation, but then let's drop it. Let's introduce Zeke so Eren can give himself the founder. Let's introduce Zeke so he can stop the rumbling in the most ass backward roundabout nonsensical way ever. Too many plot points that only benefit other people, with zero added depth because a femboy talked him out of his century-long nihilism while the story ignored his key motivators. Thank you for forgetting how to write characters, Isayama. I keep coming back to add to this specific problem, and I realize I downplayed the Kusaver influence. Zeke is a shifter, which means injuries don't really matter. If so, why does he have glasses? He has glasses because of Kusaver. We never see him with glasses before he's a shifter, nor do we see him after, like during the past chapters. His conversation with Armin. The glasses are just a reference to Kusaver, his father figure, who he actually cared for, further hammering home this writing in his character that is so weird. The funny thing is, both his father figures had glasses. It would have been great writing for him to make peace with both of his father figures. Instead, we get a half-assed panel of these zombies. You know, after writing this, I did some rereading and then I found out something extremely pressing. So let's walk through it. Let's read Zeke's monologue. They'll go on saying that if they were going to die anyway, they might as well die a proud death. It only proves how unimaginative and set in their ways they are. The little fools. Oops, I crushed it into death. What am I doing? What are you getting so worked up for? You're not like your father, remember? You need to find joy in every little thing. Now, let's turn those soldiers into proud chunks of meat. I was on call with my friend when I randomly saw this. I literally yelled, "Oh my god." This piece of dialogue is the biggest. This piece of dialogue literally feels like the biggest proof that Isayama is a fucking bum. Zeke, out of his own mouth and monologue, which he says to himself, so he can't be overtly lying, says he has to enjoy the little things in order to not be like his father. It's like we ending haters are objectively correct 90% of the time. Zeke already knows how to find value in life, as he just admitted. Again, who doesn't? Even Sasha, a canonical fucking idiot by the way. The most pressing thing is that Zeke is saying he will enjoy the little things as a form of rejecting his father. So I will say again, Isayama forgot so many of his story details. In previous developments, he wrote 137 basically blindfolded with one testicle and his leg behind his fucking ear. In Marley, Eren ate the Warhammer. He did not see all of this in his future memories, meaning he wanted the Titan. He even had an option to get the Jaw Titan but chose the Warhammer. Because Eren showed how he wanted the Warhammer pretty deliberately, he must have had a purpose for it. We see Eren do basically nothing with his Titan, and it was pretty much useless. Eren used it to free himself from the underground prison, whatever, but we're literally told that the Jaegers just could have let him out. Afterward, he uses the Titan during the Galliard and Reiner fight. 30 seconds later, he gets shot in the head, so that's like, doesn't matter if he used it or not. There's so much emphasis on this Titan, and there was even more mystery and intrigue on what the final Titan is, only for it to not do anything. Like, there's so much importance that the audience put into this Titan just for, as my goat said, there would be no difference from her just killing her rather than eating her. Chapter 129, Flock gets shot by sniper gang Gabby and shortly falls into the water. Tell me, Biden was still in office by the time they learned the ocean even exists, so I seriously fucking doubt that anyone on Paradise knows how to swim. But let's headcanon that they have like swimming pools and shit like that, like a lake, I don't know, right? Sure, maybe they do know how to swim. Flock getting shot, then surviving hours on hours on hours holding onto a ship is beyond ridiculous. AOT used to be very realistic and sensible, but hanging onto a boat for half a day after getting shot while being a regular dude is a blatant plot hole. However, this extends to many other problems somehow. As I just went over, Flock surviving getting shot in the ocean is ridiculous and unrealistic. Moreover, it was used as a contrivance for Flock to randomly shoot the boat. The boat shooting was done so it would stall the alliance, so one of them would have to sacrifice themselves to buy enough time for the rumbling. We will dive into that later, but for now, it is essentially one big contrivance to have Hanj die. This is crazy nonsense, though, from a writing perspective. First off, having one of your heroes and primary characters die due to something so divorced from the conflict is the laziest way to kill any character. Imagine instead of Frieza directly killing Krillin, it was some random spirit laser thing that Goku just happened to dodge. This was a generous comparison, as you will find out later. We have a better comparison within the series itself, within the Scouts itself. Sasha's death was done by Gabby, the girl we spent 2 volumes learning about and developing, so it paints the conflict as immediate, direct, and of course nuanced. Another angle to it is the banality of it. They cry, then they forget. And please don't use the "they're in the middle of a war" excuse. It has and will always be pathetic. We even have another comparison chapters apart. Shadis and Magith blew themselves up and it was the most whatever nigga death ever. This was even for the same reasons, so the boat can get away. In one instance, we have Isayama showing how he can write a competent death scene, but then immediately shows how he cannot and draws a parallel to a lackluster scene with our main characters. Even more than that, why would the corpse sacrifice their leader? John and Connie exist and they would be infinitely more fitting to stall, as not only they were top 10 in the cadets, they are more than willing to give up their life to save humanity. It would be more fitting for Connie since he just went through a lot after killing Sam and Daz and was willing to kill Falco as well. It would be a noble sacrifice to give meaning to the decisions he made and would be more fitting than Hanj, who's one of the smarter characters in the series. The main problem is that the writing is contrived and it's a contrivance to erase one of the most competent characters in the series. Again, shout out to my homie for putting me on this. I always thought their plan was stupid on the case of Eren could just stop you guys anytime he wants. As well, they don't know where Eren is and it will be impossible to find him with the Warhammer, etc. But immediately jumping into their plan, Levi says the rumbling can be stopped by killing Zeke. Ah, hell nah. Why would you think this and go about this plan? Similarly, you don't know where Zeke is and he could have even died. They don't know he's even alive as nobody saw him, his titans went ballistic, and Yelena and the gang said he was defeated. More than this, why would they think the rumbling would just stop? Even more than that, why did Hanj posit that idea? Hanj in chapter 34 saw firsthand how the wall titans were alive in real titans. This is what makes a previous plot hole so ridiculous. This also makes it clear how the writing in this series is interwebbed ass, not to the levels of Wano, but definitely layers of incoherence. Hanj saw clear as day and remembered very clearly how the titans needed to be hidden from sunlight. Hanj, being a titan scientist, knows why this is the case. Titans cannot move without sunlight, so why would she ever make this plan and even share it with Levi? She saw firsthand and was practically told by Pastor Nick that these titans are alive and will move indiscriminately. Random people there even commented how the titan was moving, which again is a complete contradiction to how the finale portrays them. Again, arguing that Eren orchestrated it is fallacious at best. That is simply a headcanon, and Eren himself is unaware of several things in his quote-unquote plan as he loses his mind. Armin also concludes that Eren can control every Eldian and Titan. Logically, this means that Levi and Mikasa should be the first things on their mind as counters to them being controlled. Even more than that, why would Armin say that the founder can control Titans Titans. The lore behind Ymir is that the 9 Titans are fragments of her soul or whatever, which should not logically take one over the other. Would have made the conflict a lot more interesting if the Founder's powers weren't infinite god powers, but had actual limitations that allowed the Founder / Eren to be logically defeated even if Eren wanted to lose. The whole narrative of the Attack Titan never obeying others, resisting the self-righteousness of the king, and always looking ahead toward freedom doesn't really make any sense if the Founder can control every Titan. Additionally, why wouldn't Karl Fritz just eat every Titan and store it all in one so the power of the Titans wasn't used to subjugate anyone else and they could all die at the same time? It would be infinitely more in line with his motivations and make sense logically if he could just control everybody. We will dive deeper into these quote-unquote motivations later. In fact, this entire section will be explored later because, as I said, this is just layers of ass. Levi gets hit point blank range with a thunder spear. Thunder spears are capable of tearing the armor titan apart. I should not explain how Levi should have died almost instantly. Hange explains it's his Ackerman genetics that saved him, but dude, Ackermans are basically titans in human form, so they're not actually titans. Reiner being torn open is the only standard we know for Levi similarly dying. The most pressing issue though is that days later he just walks it off. Even ignoring the port battle, the final battle is less than a week from the moment he gets blown up. This is completely inconsistent with what we're shown. Levi twists his leg or something against Annie, and not only is he still injured later in the arc, he is absent from the Clash of the Titans arc because of this injury. Levi being fine a couple days after getting blown apart is fucking crazy. Isayama recently confirmed as well that Ackermans turned back into normal people after the power of the Titans was removed. So after turning back into a normal person, Levi still didn't die after getting literally blown up and taking more injuries in the final battle. Basically, you have a character who has infinite plot armor simply because of the arbitrary nature of his genetics, turning him to a cripple when it's convenient, but also turning him into Bucky Barnes when the plot needs it. Yelena is one of the most important characters in the time skip. She pretty much was the gap between Zeke and Paradise and was the link to connect them together. Her own motivation was to simply watch the new world that would be born from her 2 brothers. Her arc is naturally seeing this, how it would affect her, and the like. She has too much importance seeped into the narrative just to be some random fodder. She was seen spectating the final Shiganshina battle with no ODM gear, simply just watching in awe. It makes sense to build this character up with a lot of connections with the motivation and just seeing it all play out with curiosity, but refusing to finalize this by making her sit on a rescue boat for the rest of the story is insane. The point is, this character was set up to have ambitions and seeing an epic climactic battle in which the fate of the world was on the line, and she gave it up simply because she arbitrarily felt like it. It is important to establish the AOT world before the final volume was purely deterministic. What is determinism? We will argue a basic definition of determinism that is essentially cause and effect. Every effect has a cause, and actions and decisions have reactions and outcomes. One example is you got in a car accident because you got in your car this morning. This also links to you getting into your car because you got a job, which also links to you wanting a car to commute to your job easier. It is layered in the sense of every reaction comes from an action. It is essentially your own desires and actions manifesting in predestined outcomes. If you by yourself are a very violent person, then determinism declares that you will probably be in a street fight because someone stepped on your shoes. Determinism is not fate. Please remember this. Determinism is not fate. It does not mean you are fated to do anything. How does this apply to AOT, however? Well, it is very clear simply because of the Attack Titan. Look at chapters 131 and 121. In the former, we see Eren look into his future memories in which he thinks to himself, what's the point in saving Ramsey if he's just gonna die anyway? His own nature as a person is what makes him save Ramsey in spite of that. Eren sees himself save Ramsey and do the rumbling simply because that's who he is. There's no fate compelling him to do such a thing in this moment. Again, in 121, Grisha, Zeke, and Eren all interact using the Founder and Attack Titan's power because it is essentially their own motivations compelling them to meet at this point. Eren explicitly states as much. For now, we have established a clear mold here. The future and all the time travel mechanics revolve around the character motivations and the traits being the cause. They want it, they're like that, they have that, so X happens. All are related to their desires. The Dina twist is what makes these consistencies of determinism and applies layers of fate to it. Eren does not want to kill his own mother, nor even control Dina. He feels like he needs to and has to. He's being compelled by another figure and is being forced to do these events, which are divorced from what we just set up. Moreover, Eren is making a conscious effort to change events in the past that have virtually nothing to do with him directly. It is implying that he needed to do it, doesn't know why he had to, but was required to because of fate. This naturally doesn't make any sense, as no character wanted Dina to eat Carla nor wanted Bertolt to stay alive. Eren is just arbitrarily doing things according to his head being messed up, which is him just being controlled. More Armin hating is always fun. Very quick and easy, it would make more sense for John to be the leader. He's a natural born leader, and he is pragmatic and sensible for several situations. It would also make his conversations and dilemmas in 127 a lot more noteworthy. Armin being commander doesn't really make sense concerning the arc he was supposed to undergo with abandoning his morals and almost having to sacrifice himself to save humanity. As well, how is a colossal titan supposed to give orders from his titan? Isayama obviously didn't think about this and was too busy trying to make Armin the hero of humanity. If not, at the very least, I should have shared it, which would add depth between the corpse, warriors, and shifters. I've literally talked about this bitch ad nauseum on this channel, and I'm low-key sick of it. She's garbage, and the author wrote her terribly, and a major oversight that I thought of back in 2021 but just ignored it because, hey, turn off your brain. The 50-year plan doesn't make any sense. Why have Historia have a child once every 9 to 10 months when you can just have Zeke impregnate 5 to 10 different women every week? As weird as it sounds, Zach Lee could have just requested Zeke's fluids to artificially inseminate in a woman, if not just have Zeke do it. It is way safer than Historia's option, as she can just die from childbirth when she's like 4 or 5, and it is much faster. Another justification for this happening is that Rod Rice, Historia's literal father, did it. He had a child with Historia's mother, who was essentially just a nobody that cleaned houses. This is just a huge logical oversight in the series, but one is probably asking, how does this affect the actual series? Well, if Zach Lee, Pixies, Nile, or even Hanj used their head and posited this idea, then the 50-year plan red herring wouldn't have worked, and Zeke would not have been able to finagle his way through parodies like he did. As we, the audience, are aware of, Pieck was with Zeke during Raikugo. A month or so later, she was also with him during the Shiganshina battle. It stands to reason that Connie can logically deduce that she was part of the Raikugo experiment. Connie, in Clash of the Titans, resolved to make Zeke answer for what he did to Raikugo. Connie not piecing these things together is a low light on his character, and the writer not making it happen is ducking conflict for arbitrary reasons. When Yelena was talking about all the atrocities they committed, why wasn't Raikugo brought up? Pieck is literally right there with Yelena, and Connie is right there sitting next to Yelena as well, and they do not speak. They speak on Liberio, but that's completely shallow. This just speaks on the writer ignoring logic for the alliance only to make them look like heroes. Yelena is obviously trying to hit close to home. That's why she brings up Marco and lords over it. The most pressing part of this non-development is how it further reinforces how Connie's not a real character. He had a clear setup with Zeke in the Clash of the Titans, but it never gets brought up again for that dynamic. Here we can air out some of the grievances, but again it is dropped. This only adds to all of Connie's future nonsense and corny lines being hand-fisted by the writer. Connie thinking killing Daz and Sam are the same just speaks to how much of an idiot he is. Saying Annie has done enough fighting is just a retarded sentiment of trying to be a nice guy without actually thinking of any lingering ramifications. TLDR, Connie is terrible, and if the character offers no value outside of being a meat shield, kill the bitch. I'm not interested in doing a full analysis on Reiner's character. That will take way too long, and Reiner's too much of a bum to fully complete it. It is important that Reiner is supposed to have a positive change character arc. You see his remorse in the pre-time skip and explore his depression and own suicidal tendencies within Marley. The only way Reiner looks to atone for his atrocities is to die, but that self-defeating mindset is what propagates itself for you to remain stagnant. You cannot move forward under those thoughts. This makes itself the case with his biggest parallel being Eren. Reiner looks to project himself onto Eren and recognize different evils within the two of them. Eren is better than that, however. We see this time and time again. Eren and Reiner are not the same. The entire arc he is naturally supposed to go through is to develop a selfish will to life, to value his own life and to let go of the guilt he carries. Instead, Reiner just sniffs a letter. There's no conclusion to what was set up concerning Marley and his dynamic with Eren. He simply just says, hey, I don't want to be like Eren, then just lust after a married woman. Chapter 128 and 137 both have Reiner put himself in compromising situations. John can't forgive Reiner because he can't forgive himself. Reiner looks to put his hope on the future all onto Falco like he did before in Marley. Nothing has changed. Nothing has developed despite having clear signs of such a thing happening. It is frankly embarrassing writing and doesn't actually talk about the pertinent issues. The expectations placed onto him as an Eldian by his mom and subsequently the world aren't addressed and simply mediated in a backwash hillbilly Resto Cole fashion. There is no conclusion or payoff, but there are volumes on volumes of setup. I have talked about the Alliance in a video of mine, but I tried to mainly highlight the several beats that personally bothered me. This time around, we're going to talk about Isayama's portrayal of the Alliance. Back in 2022, they had a reputation for being called the Cringe Vengers. This is because they felt like pretend heroes. Everything they did was for show and looking good and getting the audience on their side without working for it or being competently written. This is apparent from the moment the Alliance is beginning to be formed. Connie's about to feed Falco to his mom, and Armin makes the biggest fugazi gamble ever and throws himself in front of Falco. He doesn't talk to Connie, say anything reasonable, or do anything normal and empathetic. He simply just does the most extreme politically correct thing while expecting Connie to do the exact same thing. Then immediately they reconcile the conflict and resolve to be heroes. Look at how the chapter ends. This is Attack on Titan, War for Parodies, not fucking Infinity War. It is clear that Isayama wanted them to be heroes having to make bad decisions. They never wrestle with the intrinsic hypocrisy they carry out. Armin's entire shtick for the entire series was people capable of changing things are the ones who can throw everything dear to them. When forced to face down monsters, they can even leave behind their humanity. Someone who can't throw anything away will never be able to change anything. He has preached this mantra this entire series. However, look at Eren. Eren abandoned everything to change the fate of Paradise. Forced to face down monsters who would kill an innocent little girl, he left behind his humanity in order to kill all of it past the walls. How does Armin wrestle with this? How does it impact his character at all? How does he even begin to spawn a conflict or mediate his own insecurities? Nothing happens. Armin is proven to be objectively thematically correct across everything he does in the finale. This is why they're pretend heroes. My favorite archetype in storytelling is the flawed hero. My favorite main characters are literally Ichigo, Finn, and Aang. They are all pretty much ontologically good in their stories, but they still are flawed people who learn and resolve different problems they go through. The problem here is that Isayama wants them to be heroes so bad, he fails to acknowledge the problems they intrinsically deal with in order to paint them as good guys, which in turn creates weak writing. This is especially the case when we look at Connie during the port battle. He thinks killing Sam is the same as killing Daz. Shooting Daz is sort of justified since he was going to put a 50 cal in Armin's brain, but from Sam he could have just knocked him out or done any other option. One can argue that Sam could have posed a threat later on, so he was simply killed by association. I would argue, yeah, that's probably true. But guess what? Eren is doing the exact same thing. He's saying humanity in the future could pose a threat, so they're going to be killed by association. Just because it's a larger scale, it does not negate the overarching problem here. Again, these different elements aren't featured within the writing of the Alliance even though they should be. The general writing and dialogue is also embarrassing. Annie joins off the pie scene. We obviously all know what this is bad. We are actively trying to get people to join a group to stop global genocide. Meanwhile, we're laughing and defending a person eating pie a little fast. How fucking embarrassing. This isn't Love is War. Even in the final battle, these guys are putting on an act of heroism rather than actually being heroes. Corny one-liners like, let's go save Armin, and disappear, you nightmare, and the whole suicidal blockhead, and is that a pig's ass, and all types of nonsense that should not be written in the series' climactic battle. Like, Return to Shiganshina would not be Return to Shiganshina if it had even 1% of this dialogue. I actually just read this yesterday when I was editing. This is not even scripted. John says to Reiner, for a Titan with your name, you sure do get mangled a lot. The fuck? Huh? But here's where we reach our biggest problem. The Alliance aren't in a serious climactic battle. Every single battle ever, they're just handed a victory. During the port, nobody decided to shoot the boat, and everyone just turned tail after Flock was shot. No one even came close to being injured. Mind you, it was like 50 guys. Like, look at this panel of Connie going to like 1v10 and tell me that the intellect and they were like thoroughly challenged. They're all humans at the end of the day, so I don't know why basically no one that didn't have an oath regenerative ability didn't get the least bit injured. Like Connie wasn't injured, John wasn't injured, Hans wasn't injured. What?
What? What are you talking about?
Additionally, Shaw has decided to be a retard and blow up the train, which is a contrivance on the writer's part. The writer has to bend over backwards to facilitate the Alliance's victory. Similar to the final battle, they were saved due to dick and balls over and over and then just gifted an arbitrary win by Eren. They also just strike a pose before blowing up Eren. These guys aren't real characters. This is technically not an ending problem, as this plot hole obviously exists in chapter 1 of the story and gets elucidated upon in chapter 88 and 99. However, this needed to be on the list because no one ever talks about it, as well as I have made an entire literary analysis speaking on this plot hole and plot point itself. Karl Fritz building the walls is a plot hole. Now, you're likely gonna say, what the fuck? Why? That's kind of like the main, that's kind of like the thesis of the story, like walls and shit, right? More specifically though, the making the Titans is a plot hole. We learned from Willie Tiber, who has zero reason to lie by the way, since the entire point of the play is to air out all the misinformation and lies, that Karl Fritz wanted his people to die. He purposefully ran away and took his people's memories so that Eldians would be the only ones to suffer. His dialogue and images shown complement this message, but even if you want to counter argue and throw all types of nonsense to the wall, Frida gives us good insight. Cursed under the will of Karl Fritz, Frida says to Grisha that Eldians are the great sins upon the world and they must be the one to atone for their sins. Here is the issue. If his ideology is that Eldians all need to die and his motivations are dooming the entire island, why the fuck would he actually make the Titans to destroy the world? Why would he do that if he had no intention of using them? But that's not the point. By making them, it directly contradicts everything we're told about him. A counter argument I've heard is that multiple in real life countries like America or whatever the fuck have nukes despite having no intention of using them. This is naturally fallacious because those countries like America, if they were to get bombed by some other country, then they would want to fight back. Karl Fritz doesn't want to fight back and he actively wants his people to die. So that doesn't work. That's very, very, very fallacious and just blatantly objectively wrong. Someone also tried to say that he needed to make the Titans to make the walls. This again does not work. We see that you can just spawn hardening out of thin air, as not only that's what Eren did in the underground scene, that's how we're told the underground area was even created in the first place. And Karl Fritz is also the founding Titan, so he can just kind of do whatever he wants. So what we're left with is Karl Fritz wanting Eldians to die, but making the ultimate doomsday device in order for Eldians to fight back. What's more is that these Titans were alive. As I explained earlier, they could awaken and kill indiscriminately if enough sunlight were to hit them. So he left real deal Titans in the wall, and what's even more than that, Isayama confirmed that there were real people as Colossals, meaning Karl Fritz must have turned millions upon millions of Eldians into Titans for something he did not want to happen, nor would logically do based on his motivations. Basically, we have coded writing. Under this premise, the main conflict of the story is a lot more stale and fundamentally changes. There is no rumbling, there is no 50-year plan, there's no any of that. The walls aren't there. Even more founding Titan nonsense. This will tie into a future plot hole we'll cover, but in short, Grisha taking the founder is impossible. Chapter 133 says that the founder can manipulate literally any Eldian. We have to take that as fact now because apparently that's the case, as he could just drag people into paths, and he kind of said, Eren kind of confirmed he's not going to take anything from them. But under this case, Grisha should have got his shit rocked, right? Frida should have just erased Grisha's memories, period. Not only do we see that she has done it before and is well versed at it, Rod Rice is standing right next to her, and that man has a history of telling the founder to erase people's memories. The easiest and simplest and most reliable method for dealing with any Eldian that is reinforced throughout the entire series, just put up every single panel, is memory manipulation. The fact that two people who are aware of it and one who has done it before don't immediately do it after hearing such a lethal threat like, I'm gonna kill everyone here, is beyond insanity. Like, what? Frankly, this is just one larger retcon of the founder's powers for more arbitrary reasons. Some goofballs might say that Frida was inexperienced so she was unable to. Well, the only reason people say that was because Rod Rice said that, but Rod Rice is like coping by the fact that he got the founder taken away from him. He's like lying, the same way he's lying to Historia saying, I missed you all these years. That's a lie, and that's pretty obvious it's a lie. The same way he paints Grisha as this evil maniacal figure, but then he was actually begging the founder to save the world and actually put an end to the conflict. So not only was Rod Rice lying, I've also proved that she was not only aware of memory manipulation, she has done it before. So what inexperience would prevent you from doing something you've already done before. The funny thing is, you can do memory manipulation. We've seen it from her. You can do it without even going into your Titan. So logically speaking, it would be the first thing you would do. But again, the story would not be the story if Frida was allowed to manipulate his memories. More on this later. This one is pretty simple somehow. We all know the rumbling started, and then around 2 days later, the Alliance finally started chasing it. However, the rumbling was stated to be faster than a galloping horse, which is basically around female Titan running speed. So faster than the fastest running Titan we've seen. With all this considered, go to chapter 132 where the rumbling was behind the Alliance. Let me say that again. The rumbling was behind the Alliance. That simply doesn't make a lick of sense, and you should understand why. The rumbling had a 2-day head start while consistently moving faster than a horse at full speed. Logically, this makes literally no sense, as the only way it could have worked is that if Eren halted another wave of Titans, but that also doesn't make any sense, as if it was only waves of Titans, the rumbling would have been escaped too easily. It would only make sense if Eren planned to trample the world in waves, but that doesn't seem logical, and it would seem like 100% rumbling was never the case. As well, sending the Titans in waves, quote unquote, seems like it just guarantees the Alliance would struggle and or die, because they could have all just died from there if Flock was, I don't know. No matter how one rationalizes and thinks out this problem, it only serves to boot how contrived and pointless Hanji's death really is. As I said earlier, too much of the scene is forced to have a sacrifice from Hanji, which by itself is a terrible idea by comparisons already set inside the story itself. The fact that no character, especially Hanji, Smart, Armin, Genius, John, Pragmatic, even begin to think about how the rumbling got the fuck behind them is insane. Or how the fuck did they get in front of it? This is another problem, more contentious, and I'm willing to partially concede for the sake of drama and engaging storytelling and the like. But one of my favorite aspects of Isayama's writing style is how he's kind of like a 23-year-old woman from Miami. Nothing is free. What do I mean by that exactly? Isayama doesn't give characters anything without having a certain caveat. Eren gains Titan abilities, but he can't control them. The scouts find the basement, but they're in a deeper conflict than ever. I especially liked how this was applicable to the founding Titan. You needed royal blood, and then you needed to also bypass the vow renouncing war. But there's the problem. The author had to write a solution to the vow. He doesn't, however. Zeke is able to use the founding Titan's powers indiscriminately, and all he says is, yeah, I'm different. Zeke says that he spent a long time in paths and therefore learned how to nullify it. Not only does that not make any sense, but it trivializes the entire mechanic in the first place. If the mechanic was going to be solved off screen, there's no point in having it in the first place. If Isayama wasn't going to make it a point of conflict and thereby a solution, he didn't need to write it, especially since the will of the king was already a limiter on using the founder by itself. Remember, this was the only reason why Eren was even able to give himself the founder in the first place, because Zeke arbitrarily unlocked the founder's powers. This isn't a plot hole, as it is an ass pull resulting in a plot convenience that could be a plot hole, but at the very least is an overwhelming oversight on Isayama and what used to be his best stretch. The problem here is simply not paying off a conflict introduced as a limiter. I've seen a video, a YouTube short to be specific, saying how Zeke was able to use the founder's powers because in reality, Ymir listens to anyone with the founder. But that doesn't make any sense though. If anyone with the founder simply just needed the founder, it's an Ouroboros of like nonsense. That doesn't make that doesn't make any sense basically, right? Carl Fritz made the vow renouncing war, but then all you needed to negate the vow renouncing war was the founding Titan itself. Meaning it doesn't make any sense to get the vow renouncing war in the first place. So the answer and quote unquote solution that people give doesn't make any sense. It's literally begging the question, because you can't use the founder because of the vow renouncing war. Hey, but if you have the founder, then the vow renouncing war doesn't matter. Like, you see what I'm saying? My goat again put me on to most of these problems, but I had one of them in my bag. In short, the hallucigenia's mechanics are incredibly inconsistent and logical and were likely retconned to make the story work. The hallucigenia in chapter 122, and more apparent in the anime, was shown to stop time and adjust itself to Eren's larger body. From 122 alone, we see how the hallucigenia can shape itself into any size as well as move and stop time on some Jotaro shit. Compare this to the final battle. Characters arbitrarily say, hey, the worm might start the rumbling again, even though A, that's completely baseless and they have no reason to assume that, because of B, Zeke already died and the rumbling was stopped, so why would they assume the worm to be the catalyst for reigniting it again? This is just another instance of Isayama giving characters random knowledge for arbitrary reasons, because this reason specifically isn't close to being plot necessary based on the logic that is presented to us. The hallucigenia could have shrunk itself to be an ant, or made itself larger than everyone else, or just stopped time to reconnect with the founder. But even then, this should have never happened. This is all fake drama the author is writing for nothing but fan service. Another layer to this is that we don't know where the hallucigenia came from. We just know that it's like a space entity, creature, whatever, and we don't know where the fuck it went afterward. It just Titans end and then boom, it's over. Reiner holding it back seems entirely illogical, and the hallucigenia just spawns in Titans just for like the sake of like fan service and like, hey, there's drama and stakes, let's kill Eren now. Like it's all so ham-fisted, poorly presented, and nonsensical. As we know, Zeke woke up different shifters in the— oh my fucking god, I gotta put this at the beginning. As we know, Zeke woke up different shifters in the world of paths. The mechanics of this are really never explained, nor is it fitting for the AOC world to just have people come back after being dead for 20 years, but whatever. The fact is, the lineup of friendly shifters we see like Kusaver, Ymir, and Marcel do not make sense in story and is simply there for the audience. There is no connecting through line for these shifters. Zeke never met Kruger and Ymir, likely at least, and Zeke also got his Titan way before any of the other warriors, meaning he would have knew other warriors before Marcel, Reiner, Bertolt, etc. However, we don't see a single Kusaver era shifter. Why do you think that is? There's no logical reason, it's just arbitrary fan service. The reason why the arbitrariness of this is so bad is because it reinforces that the narrative doesn't need to build up to anything. You can just irrationally shoehorn in any random thing whenever you want. When you truly analyze the lineup, you only get more and more nonsense. Not only are there 3 Jaw Titans, which proved Isayama's priorities were fan service centric, there isn't any Warhammer Titan. The Warhammer Titan would be a Titan most motivated to stop the rumbling, but she is just absent because the audience didn't know her for more than a volume. This also further hammers home how the Attack Titan was retconned. The whole resist the king and move forward toward freedom thing, yeah, this is out of the window. For this one, I'll just play a clip from another video of mine. It just shows how this plot hole is nothing new and is very indefensible. Again, Isayama just blatantly forgot how to write, and yeah. But anyway, let's not waste any more time. Time working different in paths. In chapters 120 to 123, we see how paths is this weird time purgatory thing where a lot of things can happen virtually instantaneously. In chapter 135 and on, Armin is captured in paths and time continuously works. Instead of having any instant time stuff, he emphasizes that his friends are fighting and time is moving. One can argue, hey, maybe it's because Ymir is no longer in paths, but that isn't ever explained and it's just cheap, baseless ad hogging. But yeah, there's like no excuses for this, however. Like paths, like Armin, like paths is working simultaneously. This is also in my video, but I will elaborate on this further. Chapter 139 has Eren say that the Founder's powers has made it where he's living in the past, present, and future. People like to rat and say it's a combination with the Attack Titan, but that's not what's happening here. Not only can the Founder give you the Attack Titan's power, Ymir herself is the Founder, which is 4D. Even more, the Attack Titan can only see memories of future inheritors, which wouldn't exactly make you 4D and make you aware of like the past and like 100 million years ago. That's why she sent Eren the message as well. Ymir, who is 4D and the Founding Titan, also sent Eren a message 2,000 years ago. So we understand the Founding Titan gives you 4D time perception, whatever. The problem is that nobody knew this. When Eren used the Founding Titan's powers in chapter 50, he didn't know this or even feel it. When Zeke used the ability in chapter 120, there was also nothing to indicate that. Frida also didn't know about this ability, which is the most concerning. We see her use the Founder's powers all the time, like how she fought Grisha and manipulated Storia's memories. The fact that the 4D powers weren't bestowed upon her and she was actively shocked when Grisha said he can see the future is fucking incredible. If the founder was also 4D, she would have saw herself see the Attack Titan's ability and wouldn't have a reaction in disbelief. Think about it, guys. Grisha says the Attack Titan is capable of knowing the future, and the woman looks fucking bewildered. She then stumbles over her own words and looks puzzled. Zeke, who is literally using the founder's powers in that fucking moment, also looks shocked by its development. The founder was never 4D. Isayama just retconned it to be this way. This talking point is one of the most discussed and widely hated and defended points within the ending, for good reason as well. First, we're going to break down why from a writing perspective this was handled like trash, and then from an in-story meta sense how it was retconned in. I've partially discussed it with Mikasa's section, but you need to know the writing on a conceptual level in this presentation are impossible to swallow. It's like needing to take medicine in order to function for day-to-day life, but the pill you need to take is literally the size of a Rubik's Cube. What do I mean? In chapter 122, went out of its way to showcase how King Fritz was a deplorable, evil, greedy bastard. Ymir was literally enslaved, literally chased down to be killed, forced to have his children, forced to become a baby making machine, forced to become a weapon of war, and King Fritz actively mocked her sacrifice and reaffirmed that she was a slave and will always be one. After hearing this, she chooses to die. Go back to chapter 40. What does the founder, freckled Ymir tell Historia? So you're going to kill yourself. The ultimate act of submission. Is that how much you want to please the people who treated you like a nuisance? We have Ymir telling Historia, who was an explicit parallel to the founder, that she should live in rebellion and change her fate that was not assigned from birth. What does King Fritz say? She was born as his slave. This connection is made to hammer home how Ymir Fritz wanted to die as she hated her life and had no escape, very similar to Historia. She did not have a strong enough will to change her fate. This is all in relation to her wanting freedom. She did not want to be a slave. Even in chapter 134, we see she freed the pigs. 135. She wanted to vicariously experience freedom because she lacked it. Go to chapter 98. Father Jaeger says it was a lack of freedom he gave Grisha that pushed him to go beyond the walls. There are a large amount of ideas already present within the manga to affirm that Ymir Fritz wanted physical freedom and not to be a slave. Instead, 139 tells us she wanted freedom from love. Not only is that incongruent with all the previous ideas I literally just explained, but this was not built up at all. There's no foreshadowing toward this reveal, nor is there any real development, which is naturally more important. So basically, it comes out of literally thin air, then is made to be the entire point of the story. Even more, it was shoehorned into the final chapter along with 6 other huge reveals under the same magnitude. We learned Mikasa solved the conflict, Ymir was in love, Erenku's own mom, like blase, this is what I mean by the pill being a literal fucking Rubik's Cube. It is simply overloading the audience with so much story defining information which does not have any time to breathe by itself at all. It's literally gish galloping in a literary sense. Because the pill is so hard to swallow, here's footage of me completing Rubik's Cube as I explain the second half. The retcon here is pretty obvious. Ymir is depicted as a literal slave time and time again, even when we get a formal introduction. Having the freedom from love tagline reduces the agency of what a slave is supposed to mean. As well, it destroys an entire aspect of the story. Ymir is not a mental slave to her idea of lust or love or whatever. She's a literal slave and was enslaved simply because imperialism that she was forced to propagate. If she did this because she hated her life of love instead of any other primary motivation, it does not make her sympathetic. It makes her look retarded. When Armin rationalizes that Ymir wanted to destroy the world as well, this makes zero sense. This means she wanted to destroy the world to get over her lover. What the fuck? Like, deadass, what motivation is that? The retcon is even more explicit when you go back into the path chapters. If she was in love with the king and followed him out of love, then she would never have sent the message to Eren. More specifically, she would have listened to Zeke instead of Eren, who is made to mirror the original king and has royal blood as well. So, by denying royal blood, which is by the king, she denied the king herself. She decided to no longer be subservient and abandon this quote-unquote love. This isn't even where it stops though. If she really did love him, then she would not have tried to escape through death. That action was already contextualized with literal freedom, and trying to spin another angle onto it is trivializing the context to promote something else that isn't good. But that's exactly what happens though. Now that scene is meant to be escape from her agony of love. Reading those panels and having to conclude with that as a message sounds beyond retarded. Remember guys, she propagated the curse upon humanity and stayed in task for 2,000 years, all for some dick. Saying this is Stockholm Syndrome does not make the writing better. Like saying it's an absurdist fantasy and some random incoherent light novel bullshit does not make the writing better. Good concepts don't change terrible writing. However, we're still going to prove how it's not Stockholm Syndrome. We are never at all shown any inkling of mental freedom. That is why Ymir doesn't talk at all, because she obviously wasn't looking to be mentally free in chapters 122 to 135. Stockholm Syndrome obviously wasn't in the cards. Even more than that, a person is supposed to trick themselves and rationalize their abuser's behavior in order to get like this. Ymir's first introduction to King Fritz is her killing her parents, burning down her home, and cutting off her tongue. There is no fucking way anyone in the human history of mankind ever can rationalize such a thing. Real life Stockholm Syndrome happens over time. If Ymir and King Fritz were in real life, this would mean their first date would end with Ymir being verbally and physically abused. Nobody meets someone, gets abused, and says, "This is exactly what I want." In the final plot hole, which is personally the worst plot hole, this is what makes AOT so rotten. In chapter 139, Eren tells Armin that he moved Dina away from Bertold and forced her to eat his mom. People harp on this aspect because the Dina thing is naturally retarded, but there are new and more egregious angles to consider. Eren is admitting that he played God with the story. He is saying that Bertold would have died if he did not intervene. Please recognize what this means, however. This means Eren was playing a video editor and cutting and adding things to the AOT timeline, so it all works out. Understand, this retroactively ruins the entire story. This means no character could have ever died beforehand. If a character was in any serious danger, then Eren will manipulate the situation so they were not, and they would go out and carry their purpose. Remember when Hans almost got blown up? Eren actually mind controlled random fodder to save her and sacrifice himself. AOT firmly established itself as a tragic, depressing narrative. Mindless Titans and Trost pose a big threat, and if not for Eren, they could have all died. The entire narrative and tone of massive loss of life and humanity's comeback is immediately squandered. Paradis literally has God on their side, and if you're part of the main cast, then you are never actually going to die. Remember when that one woman was gonna shoot John, but then Armin shot her instead? I think Eren just mind controlled the woman to hesitate or not shoot so Armin could get the shot off. There's no limits to what he does. If you were a Flock or Historia or Hans, then you were never in any real danger in these arcs. Eren is readily admitting he would forcefully change events in order to make everything happen the exact way it was. So whenever I read Clash of the Titans or reread Shinganshina and get all tense because of these battles and stakes, I immediately remember, wait, Eren in 139 is gonna make it to where all the main characters survive until the end. This is just a terrible thing to include in your story. Character actions don't matter, decisions don't matter, and they're all drones being controlled by Fate and Ymir. I've literally got a comment on a previous video saying that Karl Fritz built the walls and Eren's father was killed because Eren manipulated them. Genuinely. How could anyone call that a good story? He didn't even realize how this is textbook bad writing. It is honestly astonishing and an underlying detail for why people truly despise AOT and the ending. So we just dive deep as hell into the problems the ending has. Even if we take away half of these problems, that is still 20 different problems / plot holes. This is all reduced to the final volumes of the series as well. I didn't talk about any of the plot holes in the pre-time skip at all. Erwin. But there are still a substantial amount of problems that I didn't even bring up, such as Mikasa flying into the mouth as an example. It is logically inconsistent with what we're presented, but I choose to ignore it and just include it in conjunction with the nonsense of Mikasa and Ymir. To sum it up, there are way too many fucking problems this ending has. Either conceptually, literally, thematically, the writing here is just abhorrent. It's shite, mate. Despite the ridiculous preponderance of evidence I just gave you about the writing and the ending being terrible, there's still a lot more to talk about. Many people hear these flaws and rationalize and headcanon all types of stuff to still make the narrative work. Even though I tried my best during this section to eliminate any counter arguments to these plot holes and objective narrative flaws, there are certain individuals who will ignore all these to prop up their own narrative. On some isnt shit, it is my job to dispel these fake narratives. We will do a hands-on approach on many AOT videos that try to say the writing is good and or makes sense. This is a long time coming, to be honest, because I truly do hate some of these folks. This section may be extraordinarily long, so go to the description for more specific chapters. I am a lover of video essays. For the better part of 3 years, I've spent a lot of my time just rewatching video essays and trying to find new ones. My favorite video essays when I wrote this are How Toy Story 4 Destroyed Everything and The Most Important Dynamic in Bleach. My favorites change a lot because right now those are not my favorite anymore, but basically know that I know what a good video essay is. Today we will dive into multiple video essays and explain why they are wrong. It is important to note that I'm not suggesting an alternative to what these guys present. Similar to the prologue, I'm simply debunking these claims and points related to these videos. It's like me saying X doesn't make sense without presenting Y as an alternative in order for it to make sense. This is all to fuel my underlying thesis that I haven't really explicitly stated because I don't need to, that AOT doesn't have a theme or set of principles or message for the story. The author arbitrarily wrote shit in a story that is completely incongruent with what was previously inside that story. In order to not make this script and video 50 times longer, I will only limit myself to 5 videos. Lord knows I will make this shit longer than Jason Love, but let's show some restraint this time around. The videos I will get into for personal and business reasons are Understanding Eren Yeager by Sage's Reign, I Spent a Year Analyzing Eren and Here's What I Found by HD, and finally, This Video Will Change How You See Eren by Invaderzz. Basically, we will break down these videos and debunk all sorts of erroneous claims these boys make. I'm not hating just to hate, however. I genuinely think these videos propagate a bad narrative by ironically ignoring the narrative. As a word before we start, Isayama doesn't even know what he wrote. Isayama has said in multiple different interviews that the story has gotten away from him at multiple points where he could not successfully write. He has also stated he had no way to make Armin talk his way out of the Paradis conflict. Even more, he contradicts himself all the time with his views on Mikasa and whether or not the ending has been planned since day one. The fact that the writer himself can act like an imbecile online out of his own volition proves that the story isn't exactly coherent. Even more proof is the fact that Isayama lampshaded a lot of the problems with the ending within the AOT school cast movie endings. Basically, do not blame me because the author does not know how to write. It's like, if I slept with your girl, don't get mad at me because the bitch was choosing. Be mad at her, then be mad at yourself for letting it happen. Then get mad at Kubo because he couldn't save you with his greatness. First big thing with Sage's Reign's video is apparent from the thumbnail. He says Eren has not changed from that child we see in the flashback chapters and subsequently chapter 1. This immediately shocks me because the first big claim of his video is immediately contradicted in the first 30 seconds of his own damn video. 20 seconds in, look at what he says.
Iterates at different times in his life, throughout the different stages of his development.
Throughout the different stages of development immediately implying no means he moved past the child you claimed he never moved past. You can try to semantic this all you want, but it reads weird as fuck to say, hey guys, he never changed, but he still develops. He says weird things like this throughout the video. 4 minutes and 40 seconds in, he says this.
And no matter what, no matter the cost, he always understood that if you do not fight, you can't win. And if you don't win, you will never be free. And anyone who rejects this idea does not matter. Those are Eren's words.
It reads really weird to me, like he's saying if you reject the fight mantra, then you don't matter, instead of what Eren really means, which is if you reject the freedom everyone inherently has, then you don't matter. Maybe it's done like this intentionally, but it still makes the video feel incoherent to some degree. An analysis/video essay should not have these moments, especially 1/7 of the way into it. 6:26, Sage's Reign makes the biggest, hugest leap into any conclusion I've ever seen. I was listening to this in the shower and I deadass yelled, "What?" like a little girl after hearing it.
Learning that freedom wasn't simply outside the walls or outside the Titans, that freedom wasn't even past the sea. Eren came to the conclusion that he could not attach his morality to his desire for freedom any longer. At this point, he has not only accepted his past, but his nature, and he has accepted that freedom could only be achieved in one way, by killing everyone past the sea.
Peter, what are you doing? Crack? What the fuck?
So the problem is fairly obvious here. He is trying to bridge the story together without it actually making sense or being coherent. Another thing is that he's basically saying he wants to destroy the world from chapter 90 in the pre-time skip. Sage's Reign Sage's Reign also says Eren is fighting against himself and the monster within. I can admire this angle like how it's done in Bleach, but this right here is frankly really dumb. It's dumb because it implies there's a side of him that wants to do the rumbling and one side that doesn't, when in fact it's both sides that don't want to become a mass murderer and both sides that want the outcome of the rumbling. So I don't agree with this angle he's putting on at all, just like how I don't agree with Sage's Reign constantly saying Eren is just a kid going through a hard time.
He and Ymir are so much alike for that matter. They are both still children who want to be free.
Frankly, I really do hate some of these video essays because they're objectively wrong at different points.
Where Reiner moves forward for something other than himself, Eren does not.
Buddy is conveniently ignoring chapter 130. The entire reason he followed Zeke's plan and the reason why 130 was written the way it was because Eren did not want to sacrifice Historia. Sage's dick is saying that Eren is moving forward selfishly when a huge layer of his motivations is with Historia's safety and her living a long life.
Where Reiner moves forward for something other than himself, Eren does not.
For the next few big points Sage's Reign makes is linked to Eren's motivations. He says things like wanting to make a world a blank plane to explore and that his future doesn't change because he doesn't change. I respect a portion of this guy's Adventure Time videos, but this video specifically is embarrassing. For example, 1250, he reads the most surface level panel from 122.
I think Eren in this moment was not only looking for the power to enact the rumbling, but him genuinely connecting with and saving a girl who has suffered for so long.
Shut your stupid ass up.
Very disappointing, actually. Some things he says in this video is so flowery and rosy and pretentious that I actually frown while listening to it. One moment that gives me a similar feeling is 2452.
The possibility that Eren is unfree lies not because of another's will, but rather because he is a slave to his own desires, to his own nature. Eren is a slave to the idea of freedom.
Dude says he is a slave to the idea of freedom, and I find it so fucking funny because earlier in this video he showed a panel of chapter 90. Chapter 90 where Eren thinks of the outside world and the freedom it possesses, then he immediately thinks of his aunt getting torn apart by dogs. Tell me, reading this page in sequence, can you conclude that Eren was a slave to the idea of freedom? Obviously not. And if you think that way, you genuinely need to stick to Paw Patrol or Fire Force or whatever it is you fucking do. Sage's Reign also says the idea of Eren getting freedom keeps changing and how it goes from going past the walls to the ocean to fire on water to wiping out the world. This is a complete misreading or just bad media literacy, unfortunately. Eren did not care about the literal sights. He wanted the ability, the agency to see those sights. Eren's freedom has always been the same. There should be no walls caging him in. This is apparent from episode 1 from chapter 1. The problem is Sage's Reign and most people who glaze the series, they over-intellectualize and philosophicalize Eren and his own actions. After me saying that Eren wanted to move past the walls that caged him, they would respond by saying some bullshit like there will always be limits on you. When that's not the point of Attack on Titan. This video is very bad. From the mediocre production and lo-fi beats to study 2 type music, it's nothing crazy immersive, which means the script has to put in a lot of work. The script is also bad, however. Multiple times he's objectively wrong or just says some weirdly phrased things or just misunderstood another thing.
Where Reiner moves forward for something other than himself, Eren does not. And no matter what, no matter the cost, he always understood that if you do not fight, you can't win. And if you don't win, you will never be free. And anyone who rejects this idea does not matter. Those are Eren's words. Learning that freedom wasn't simply outside the walls or outside the Titans, that freedom wasn't even past the sea.
He speaks to a carnal vagueness to Eren that isn't exactly explained in the analysis, but is more inferred, and he wants to point you in a general direction rather than walk you through it. An analysis should obviously do the latter, however. The video is 30 minutes long, and it feels like it runs itself over with multiple mentions of Eren fighting against his own self, Faye being used as the benchmark for freedom, and Eren's motivations concerning freedom. Some of these are excusable, but it feels like the same things are being said without any new facets, which bogs down the video. My conclusion of this mug is bad video that feels poorly pieced together. Full disclosure, I have interacted in this guy's comment section before this video. I prodded at the fact that he trivialized a large part of the manga concerning world building and general conflict writing. Since then, I've tried to be a lot more fair and liberal coming into different AOT praise videos. Like, dude comes in the first 30 seconds saying, hey, if you dislike the manga and think Eren is terrible, please watch until the end. And I just didn't. This time around, I will be as fair as possible while being more respectful, because this guy isn't making a living off YouTube with almost 500,000 subs like Sage's Reign. He also acts to be respectful, which I low-key ignored, so I'll try to tone a little bit. Basically, I'll be a lot nicer because Sage's Reign should be doing better for having 500,000 subs and multiple views with millions of videos and thousands of likes. But yeah. Let's get into it. Firstly, this video looks amazing. This editing and production one person can't do without passion and a fuck ton of time. So already I'm engaged, and this is a great start. One thing he says at 4 minutes and 58 seconds is that the Attack Titan has an ability to make the wielder strive for freedom.
It's actually never thoroughly explained. He always says that he's just born like that and he can't help but be this way since he's always been like this. Even when you look at him, whenever he talks about it, he always has this look of just pure bliss. He talks about it as if it's this hungry beast that can never be tamed, something innate to him, which leads me to believe that it's part of the power of the Attack Titan.
He admits this is a headcanon, albeit he communicates it with the correct disposition. I disagree, and I think the Attack Titan seeks freedom and all the other inheritors sought freedom because 1, the world around them actively took away their freedom, and 2, Eren was manipulating them to push them all to the one moment in paths, like Grisha says. It is a bit wonky and weird, but this just makes sense based on what is contextual within the series and what we know for a fact. I will say the argument he makes for the Attack Titan being this sort of cursed figure is a good argument. I don't necessarily agree, however, because this isn't really explained, nor is it contextual with any of the beats around the plot. At 8 minutes and 40 seconds, Mr. HD says that Eren saw his own future because he had the founder and Attack Titan.
What makes Eren's experience with the Attack Titan different is that he's the only holder to have seen his own future. Everyone else sees memories of future holders, not their own. This is because Eren had both the Attack and the Founding Titans. So not only was he able to control what past holders saw, but at what time too. Essentially, just like Grisha, Eren was trapped and locked in the duty of the Attack Titan. But
I truly don't think this is the case. This is because we're told blood relations make memories stronger, and if future Eren just sent memories down to Grisha, that means past Eren, since he related to Grisha, will just see all the future memories, including the ones from future Eren. He says that Eren was locked into the duty of the Attack Titan. This also doesn't make much sense because the moment every Attack Titan fought for was the moment Eren made happen. As Grisha stated, please remember this chapter and this line for what will come forward. This is the most important shit in the fucking story, by the way. Eren being locked into a duty set by himself is convoluted hogwash that can just be explained by free will and nature over nurture. Ace also says Eren didn't have a choice with his memories and the like, and uses 139 to substantiate this. The start of his video aims to get detractors to understand his position, and if you want to do that, using 139 as evidence is typically a bad idea. It's a bad idea in this case because before 139, Eren did have a choice. He had a choice to do the 50-year plan. He had a choice not to save Ramsey. He had a choice not to attack Liberio. He did all these things because he wanted to. This is how Eren is actually complex. The future is molded by his own actions, and his own actions to show how selfish and violent he really is, and that is what upsets him to some degree. He's upset because of his own nature, but again revels in the idea that he has the willpower and strength to save his nation. It's multifaceted, with the continuous idea being the cost or price for freedom. Ace says that Eren didn't have a choice, but ignores the fact that he did have choices, and 123 and 131 tells us this. He then ironically shows the first few pages of 130. The first few pages of 130, when correctly translated, literally mean Eren wanted the future and he willed it into place. Tread lightly with the sentence I just said. All I am saying is that Eren is saying that he wanted the future even if it was predetermined from the start. I will link a post about it in the description, but it's pretty widely known that 130 is mistranslated and or worded extremely weirdly. Basically, Ace just contradicted himself without even knowing it. He says he didn't have a choice even though he literally willed the future and wanted it. Nice. He then says Isayama says that he had the ending planned out from the beginning. Common sense and a basic comprehension of mystery writing and plot development says that he did change it. Grisha giving the founder to Eren, Soria's plotline, Paredes getting nuked, all these things cannot be the original creative vision from Isayama because all these things are fucking terrible. Furthermore, Isayama had came out and said he'd changed the direction of the story to fit with his new influence perception of Eren. Some people might have tried to rationalize this with, it's just the direction, but that simply doesn't make any sense. If I tell you I have to get to work at 5 p.m., but I change the direction of me getting to work, how the fuck did the direction change? It means something along the line was fundamentally changed. Ace uses chapters 69 and 71 to explain why Eren is not special.
Explained by Isayama's favorite chapters.
Honestly, full disrespect, if you think Eren isn't special after reading the first 130 chapters of the manga, you have brain damage. A normal person isn't able to save everyone in Trust. A normal person isn't able to save everyone in the Clash of the Titans. A normal person isn't able to take over an entire government in a couple of days and fight for freedom and win. Objectively speaking, Eren is special. If it wasn't for Titan powers, argument hacks, and already trained soldiers, he likely would have been #1 in his training corps. By definition, that nigga is special. He guided himself to Ymir. In 2,000 years, no one was able to comfort her and free her from the shackles of the first king. Basically, you're objectively wrong here, and the way I view it, if you're objectively wrong in a video, especially with one of your big points being Eren isn't special, the video is gonna cut, it's over. Besides that, this is where we get into the real meat and potatoes that made me crash out in the comment section. 13 minutes and 0 seconds.
But most importantly, he wasn't well-rounded enough to recognize this and acknowledge that his worldview was simplistic and unrealistic, thus hindering his ability to adjust his mindset. So since he inherited the Attack Titan at a very young age, the result of the rumbling has already been decided, because he still had his simplistic morality and worldview of the us versus them and the all or nothing mentality. He was basically an idiot that was a slave to a childish idea of freedom. He was never really interested in seeing the sea or anything from Armin's book. He just wanted an unrestricted freedom in a world that only contains his friends. And if anyone tries to take something away from this, Eren has the right to take all their freedom, which is usually their life. His freedom essentially depended on stripping others of theirs. It was more the idea of control rather than ever was freedom.
Ace says that Eren had a simplistic view of the world and it was us versus them. He also criticizes Eren's view of freedom and says that it was more about control rather than freedom. He then says that Eren isn't special because he wasn't smart enough to think past the extremely narrow and small-minded view of the world. Let me explain in great fucking detail why this nigga is retarded. Eren's view of us versus them is constantly substantiated by the story. He is fighting against indiscriminate titans of slaughter. Of course, it's humanity versus them. He is fighting against titan shifters hell-bent on killing all of them. Of course, it's us versus them. He is fighting a global conflict where world leaders know that Paradisians haven't done anything wrong and they are all ignorant to anything of their past, yet they still choose to genocide them anyway. Every major conflict of the series says in big red bold letters, us versus them. And you're criticizing Eren for arbitrary thematic reasons. The whole control over freedom thing is genuine nonsense. He said that Eren's shtick was really about control and not freedom.
His freedom essentially depended on stripping others of theirs. It was more the idea of control rather than ever was freedom.
You know, I just wanted to ask, you know, how do you deal with it?
Deal with what?
You know, with being retarded.
So when Eren wanted to go past the walls to have the ability to see the sights, was it because he wanted to control those sights? When he hated Titans for taking away his freedom, was it because he wanted to control the Titans? How brain dead is this argument to say that Eren was concerned with control more than freedom? He wanted to be free from the things that controlled him, like the walls and the Titans. He joined the Scouts specifically because he wanted freedom past these things, as did every other Scout member. They joined the Scouts and dedicated their hearts for the freedom past the walls and past the subjugation of the Titans. That's literally what the Scouts mean. Again, terrible fucking point. Genuinely embarrassing. At 16 minutes and 6 seconds, the next point he says, which is the major talking point for the video, is how Eren viewing the sea regresses back to his childhood state of simple-minded worldview, whatever the fuck.
From this moment until the final chapter, we witness the complete annihilation of all the development Eren underwent throughout the entire story, to basically have him revert and become the adult version of that simple-minded, traumatized child from the beginning of the story.
He also says how this is until the final chapter. Weird how 139 is supposed to fix this, but whatever. My slight issue here is how he emphasizes on viewing the sea. How does the sea change him? Like, not the memories, not the boats, not Yelena. Just a weird thing to say, oh, this is like the boiling point, him just seeing the sea. Even more weird is how he ignores a huge part of Eren's post-time skip development. Like, I mean, dog staring out the window type of ignoring. This is a motivator for me making videos like these. If you're going to do an analysis, you have to incorporate everything related to the topic. Cutting and edging things out to fit different pieces of an agenda is not an analysis. He also subtly contradicts himself by saying this. After this, he simply recaps the plot in a video essay as voice by going over regular beats of the story.
After 2 years were wasted with no real solution in mind for Paradis, Eren finally decided to take things into his own hands. He still wasn't fully sold. Even though he started it, he was hoping for something to pull him out. Eren set himself a goal for the strip, which was finding anything that would diverge him from the path that was laid out for him. Just look at him when they were on the boat. This is the look of a depressed man who's dreading everything that's about to happen, desperate for change, but he wouldn't find it.
Saying very simple, understandable things from anyone who's ever read the manga, not watched the anime since Out of Order, but has read the manga. He says how he wanted to check if the future could be changed, and he gives up, and the mirror scene is when he fully accepts that he's the villain and resigns himself to the future. He even uses his disrespect to Hange to justify this.
And it was brilliantly shown to us with the mirror scene. Eren finally fully giving in and committing himself to that destiny that haunted him all those long years. Immediately after this scene, we see him completely embracing the role of the scumbag when he threatens Hanji.
This is evidently, again, wrong, and which is like crazy to me. He asks Hange for another way other than a rumbling, still testing if he can get a new future. He also sits in that same jail cell for a month despite being able to take over whenever he wants. He obviously wants a different solution, even up to when he fights Reiner. Remember this detail for later, by the way. 23 minutes and 50 seconds. The way he talks about 139, it makes me want to reconsider what I think, but then I immediately look at the panels again. Him saying it makes sense for Eren to be pathetic doesn't actually fit with the terrible presentation and tone deafness of it all. Saying that's the point doesn't fix any criticism. It just reinforces that it will always be divisive. Eren says the founder can control people in the past, and instead of it being explored, they just talk about Mikasa while Eren contradicts himself multiple times and cries, simultaneously genociding the world. He also calls a full-scale rumbling illogical and almost foolish at 24 minutes and 8 seconds.
He felt like Eren is back. This pathetic display actually perfectly encapsulates the mindset that would lead to thinking that a full-scale rumbling is the only way. This all-or-nothing lone wolf mentality is not heroic at all. It's not even justifiable sacrifice for the greater good. He's not being brave, stoic, or logical. If anything, it's the opposite. He's being self-absorbed, evil, narrow-minded, stupid, nihilistic, and lazy. It's just silly.
I've already written this video and another one talking about the rumbling as a writing tool. Whenever people say shit like this, I know for a fact they don't understand basic writing. The gist basically goes that the Wall Titans have to be narratively relevant because of Chekhov's gun. The only use of the Wall Titans that aligns with the resolution of the main conflict was the destruction of the entire world, not a half fucking 50-year plan or 80%. Saying the full rumbling is bad is saying that Isayama wrote a bad concept and conceding he had to use bad methods to deal with the bad concept. He then says some anime only shit which I'm not interested in. The anime is an adaptation, and an adaptation changing something does not mean the book is magically fixed. He critiqued the original dialogue in the manga and how it does portray Eren as a martyr. Yes, Isayama wrote it like that because he wanted Eren to be viewed like that, as he admitted in the New York panel.
As I was getting influenced by the works of the anime Attack on Titan, I shifted the portrayal of the main character Eren to be more of a good guy in order to convince the readers of his intention and decisions. I really have to kind of steer the direction of the stories. I still have doubts within myself. I'm not even so sure, and I still struggle on this point, and I'm very sorry about that.
2750, Ace puts on a Mickey Mouse tone that I thought was a partial joke, but until he actually started speaking normal, and that made me laugh a little bit.
But Eren not being able to escape creates a problem within the story structure itself. If you look at it, the series shows us a problem, but it never gives us a solution. And
But besides that, he speaks on a positive message behind Eren, but I think this is entirely flaccid. He basically says at 26:06 that you should not be trapped by circumstance and to break free from those perceived limiters. He cites himself as an example as well as toxic relationships, so the crux of what he's saying is completely dependent on Eren being quote-unquote trapped. Now let me explain these two different routes that are completely not applicable, in which turn the message completely hollow. 1. Eren wasn't actually trapped by himself. Nothing he did trapped himself. This is because he was forced to do the rumbling, something I'll further substantiate with common sense later on. This might sound like an oxymoron, but he didn't see himself do the rumbling, then was forced to follow fate. He actively willed it into existence because he did not see his future from A to Z. 130 literally says everything happened because he wanted it to. So by this angle, no, he was not trapped. Number 2, Eren was trapped because of fate and things outside of his control. It's ultra apparent in the anime, but Eren was tied down to fate in the manga. Even in the New York Times interview with Isayama, the interviewer says Eren had no choice but to follow the future that he was powerless to in the Founding Titan's powers. The message you derive from someone who was forced by fate and empowered by fate can't be something inspiring or uplifting from your own circumstance. If I was in an abusive relationship, how would a story about a man being trapped by fate, never able to have a normal life, not able to be with his lover, not a friend to his friends, and the evilest person in the world make me realize how to break free? That makes no sense at all. Break free from your conditions by looking at a person who's entirely trapped by fate. That's not an uplifting message, and that's not anything special. A true uplifting message would be seen in literally any other anime/show. Fullmetal Alchemist speaks on the struggle and journeys within the human heart. If this message about Eren is uplifting to you, please check your definition of uplifting. He literally says the message is that we all have a choice to break free and truly move forward. However, this is quite literally the antithesis of Eren in the finale. He acknowledges this and lampshades it as, hey, you have no excuse, which is just the most deaf thing I've ever heard in my entire life. In short, this video is insanely well made. The editing is out of this world, and the script is pretty well put together with sort of strong arguments. The way he presented some arguments, it made me genuinely consider some points and things. Unfortunately, the core of most of these guys' arguments are very bad, however. Eren being a simplistic, narrow-minded character, the message being uplifting, Eren isn't special, a lot of time is dedicated to these nonsensical talking points and things that are incongruent with the story being told. So while a step in the right direction in terms of scripting and editing, nonetheless still very ill-informed and illogical. Another detail is how this guy mentioned the episode in chapter bystander. Only AOT fans will turn a chapter that shows how Eren is special and turn it into something that says he's nobody special and actually thematically wrong and a bum. This video is the most popular Attack on Titan video ever made in the history of time. A Slap on Titan episode 1 has 1 million more views, but this video has almost 50,000 more likes. This permanently changed the discourse of Attack on Titan forever, and is the modern day Naruto the self-made hypocrite. As a fan of Mr. Serenity myself, as he watches some of my videos too, so that's pretty cool, I believe this channel, this video, all of it should have never existed in the first place. In order to get down to the root of this long ass baby dick video, we have to tackle AOT as a whole. This means I have to dig deep into the series to actually get behind many motivators invaderzz makes. As a result of this part being extraordinarily long, I will not engage with the video chronologically, but highlight major weaknesses in this video and invaderzz reading comprehension. An important note to make before we start is that invaderzz, who we will call Tyler for the remaining duration of the video, says he was just like one of us.
For a time, I myself was one of the people who believed that. I hated the ending, and I hated what I felt like it had done to Eren.
He thought it was similarly ruined and or retconned and was adamantly disappointed with the ending. He says that through discussion and revisiting, he found solace and was motivated to share his findings. So the main takeaway is that he was also upset, but somewhere along the line, someone convinced him that he was wrong, and he now turns that into enlightenment and looks to share it. This video can be described as Tyler finding enlightenment after his experience with AOT. He even aims to shed a lot of misconceptions and ideas that lead to people feeling this certain way regarding the ending of the series. His goal is to make people similarly enlightened. That seems to be the motif of the video, and let's see if he can make it. This is my analysis of that short video. My notes will be in the description if you'd like that. First things first, Tyler is not dumb. I will call him all types of names, but he's not a dumb person. I've done my research on this guy, and he seems like a real laid-back, chill type of guy. He talks about his YouTube comments in a funny way on Twitter. He likes games that I like. He thinks End of Eva is amazing. He likes JoJo and thinks Araki is a crazy goober, just like I do. Tyler is a person, and his reputation definitely precedes him, but it shouldn't be him. Serenity loves picking on him, and is very funny, but realistically, Tyler is just a person. I'm not going to call him specifically a retard or a moron because I kind of feel bad, because imagine you make a video on one of your favorite stories sharing your journey and thoughts, and it becomes the biggest video on that story ever, and communities of people who have known nothing about you all just start hating you for some reason. That sounds a little crazy to me. I could handle something like that because I'm built different, but Tyler is probably just Tyler. I would love to talk with Tyler, not to debate and prove him wrong, but just prove how he's a normal, chill guy. Because if I were to debate him, I'll probably slam him to the ground, but that's not my intention today. That's not my intention. There are 4 points I will get into concerning the video. This is an analysis of an analysis, which is a weird Ouroboros that will only get more confusing as we go on. To reduce confusion and the like, I will try my best to be as concise as humanly possible. Eren, freedom, and 139. One of the first things Tyler wants to establish is Eren's position in the world he lives in. This comes to be one of the most important points in this video. He constantly develops this point, and it becomes one of the last things he says after closing out Eren's character. He says that Eren is immeasurably bored with the world he lives in, and he gets this just off chapter 74.
However, he was exceptionally bored with the uneventful world in front of him.
The thing is, Eren literally says right after saying he was bored that it's not uncommon for a child to be born on that date. Eren right there is saying how he is no different from most other people just for being bored in that one moment. This entire Eren was bored with the current world blah blah nonsense is entirely an extreme extrapolation at best, simply because Eren himself is saying, yeah, me being bored isn't anything particular. It's like that one line can be read as a clear debunk to this entire idea. This means later in the video when he uses school cast, we can throw that shit out the window.
Isayama has said before that school casts would be relevant to understanding the main story, and I believe that this is what he was talking about.
Ever since I had that dream about the zombies, I haven't been able to stand this boring life where nothing happens. Of course humanity isn't in danger of being annihilated. It's impossible. A dream that ridiculous would never... No, wait. If the danger doesn't exist, then I could just cause it myself. A threat to all of humanity.
Even then, Schoolcast has Eren regret becoming the greatest threat to humanity. And there's a clear double standard with Schoolcast. In Schoolcast, Historia has a crush on Eren. However, when it comes to the pregnancy subplot, Tyler thinks it's delusional in the reach to think Eren is the father. Basically, he is arbitrarily using Schoolcast to boost his argument and ignoring or is completely ignorant to the fact that there's plenty of evidence from Schoolcast that puts into contention his beliefs. This whole Schoolcast thing is only being used to make Eren seem like a bored psycho Michael Myers I kill for love of the game character. So immediately this whole Schoolcast thing is cooked, especially since using third-party material for the main story is corny as fuck. Most importantly, Tyler is trying to say that Eren would destroy a free world just because he's bored, and it's in his nature. Actually embarrassing content. Even more than that, Tyler thinks Eren's conception of freedom is intrinsically warped because he associated freedom with emptiness. This is the most bizarre interpretation I have ever heard from any story ever. You would literally have to think Eren is a retard, idiot, psychopath to think that he saw freedom as emptiness. The thing is, you would also have to be that retard, idiot, psychopath to posit that. Why? Because in the same scene Eren explains why he felt unfree, he learned that there was an entire place taken away from him because of the walls. Then he learned that the Titans are what kept them in that birdcage. What does chapter 1 literally say? He could never forgive them and was angry as a result. This literally means he felt unfree because there were sights he couldn't see, not any vast emptiness that he was entranced by. The simplest and easiest interpretation is that Eren was denied the agency to do something and was angry as a result. Not like a child, before people start bickering on that. The weirdest and goofiest interpretation is that Eren associated freedom with the emptiness that he saw. Reminder, Tyler says this was the only conclusion Eren's character could have come to. He literally thinks this is a given within Eren's character, just being a crazy psycho bored killer. He also thinks Eren was always a cold-blooded killer. I think this is one of the most retarded things you could say ever regarding Eren's character. Eren was always hot-blooded. This is why he screams and shouts and yells whenever he does anything violent. Compare this to an actual cold-blooded killer like Kenny. He blew up Fine Shit's head and just walked off. Tyler only says this because he needs Eren to be a freak of nature who can't change because he was born that way. Tyler even says that Eren was born with the desire and ability to destroy the world.
So where was this Eren, the one capable of murdering billions of people, all of this time? In truth, he'd always been there. What changed was our perspective.
This is where we come to my biggest contentions. Firstly, Eren was developed into someone who would destroy the world. Secondly, he was pushed to do the rumbling. This is likely the most important part of this entire Tyler section. Eren was forced to do the rumbling. Tyler is the original perpetrator of the Eren didn't do the rumbling out of necessity and he did it just because he wanted to idea, but Eren was pushed to do the rumbling. Not only can I prove this to be unequivocally, categorically, scientifically, and objectively the case, thinking otherwise is a sign of terrible sewer-sipping media literacy. The idea of the rumbling was put into Eren's head in chapter 90. No, not because of the future memories, it's because Zackley himself says that the only way to fight against the world is with the rumbling. And guess what? He says if the entire world hates us, then I guess the only weapon we have, since we're 100 years behind because we don't even know what a fucking photograph is, would be the rumbling, right? And then Han says, yeah, you're kind of right, yeah. Then, following this, years later, every option they have becomes obsolete. Hizuru would not allow them to trade with other nations so they can bridge peaceful relationships. Eren would not allow Historia to be sacrificed and her children to be turned into cattle at all for a plan that might not even work. There is literally anti-Eldian propaganda for mentally unstable Titan survivors of war. Not only that, in the main storyline, Zeke and all the warriors say, guys, if we don't lock in, they're gonna kill us all. The world already thinks it's pointless to discuss the rights of Eldians. Let me repeat that again. The world already thinks it's pointless to discuss the rights of Eldians. Following this, all the world leaders recognize that the Paradisians are innocent victims. They still choose to eradicate the island and subsequently the Eldians though. The era of Titans was over and this once again puts them into question of being useful. Each living Eldian in the Intimate Zone was just another pure Titan they can use for war. This conflict has persisted for 2,000 years and it can't just end randomly. There has been a war between Marley and Eldians for the last 2,000 years. No side is willing to just roll over and affirm death. Taking all of this into account, why would anyone assume the rumbling wouldn't be used? If the world hates Eldians so much that they don't even want to talk about their rights and the era of Titans is over, why wouldn't the Eldians use their final move to fight back? From the moment we were introduced to the outside world, the idea of Eldians being on a time limit is immediately set and fleshed out. That's only the world building side that argues that Eren had no choice. Eren himself has an infinite amount of evidence for not wanting to do the rumbling. The first and best piece of evidence is in 131. He explicitly, and I mean, stop the fucking video, bruh. He explicitly said he will not do the rumbling if he was given another option. Period. It's over. It's over. Anything anyone else can say, it's over. It's over. GG, it's over. It's done. It's done. He literally says in 131 he would do another option. He would take another option if it was given to him. It's over. Naturally, this means if he could trade with other nations or simply make a peace treaty to give his life to Marley to protect Paradise, then naturally he would not do it. This is literally explicit dialogue, but people still think he wanted to do it because he just wanted to. Even more subsequent evidence is within the Alliance. Han says Eren resorted to the rumbling because of her feckless idealism. Jon says they couldn't find any other solution, so Eren was forced to wipe out the rest of the world. Jon and Magath argue, and Jon says Marley forced him to the rumbling, and Magath implicitly agrees. He doesn't fight against it, he's right. Armin says they will take responsibility for the rumbling because they forced him to that point. Eren sat in a jail cell for a month before making a move. Before this, he also asked Hange if there was another way to please let him know. Hange says she had no future or no hope to show Eren. Flock even says Eren is the only hope for Paradise or they will all die. Again, with all this evidence considered, mind you, the world hates Eldians and don't think they have any rights and should all die. The world has been fighting Eldians for 2,000 years of the cycle continuing. Multiple characters with drastically different ideologies and personalities all agree that Eren was pushed to the rumbling. Eren himself saying and showing he doesn't want to do the rumbling, saying Eren didn't do it out of necessity is objectively wrong. I can show panel after panel after panel, all funding the same idea that Eren was pushed through the rumbling. Guys, the author deliberately put a character from the opposite side of the war saying, we adults birthed that monster. It is the height of illiteracy to ever posit the rumbling wasn't necessary. The 5th-year plan could have worked, sure, maybe, but you would need to force a mind control butt plug into Zeke and Eren in order for it to even start. Rumbling, motivations, future memories. One of the most prominent ideas Tyler puts up is Eren's future memories.
So taking all of that into account, what memories did Grisha receive from Eren in the future? He received Eren's memories of activating the rumbling and reaching the scenery that Eren described as freedom. He received Eren's memories of Eren and Zeke exploring his own memories and paths, including memories of Eren telling him to eat the founder. He received other miscellaneous future memories from Eren, such as meeting Ramsey. When Eren kissed Historia's hand, these are the memories that he recalled from Grisha. Grisha did not receive any memories from Eren beyond the scenery of freedom. That also means that Eren did not learn at this time anything beyond reaching that scenery either. But if that's true, then doesn't it mean that Eren had no idea he would be stopped in the end? And the answer to that question is yes.
He is probably one of the first people to say that Eren learned his entire future post-rumbling. I sort of said it earlier, the idea that Eren saw the future again is true. Like, I mean, objectively true off 139. Eren says the Founder's powers are 4D, so when he unlocked them, he did see the future. I have no choice but to agree with Tyler, but I disagree that he gained memories of the future from Zeke, or hugging Ymir specifically. The main problem this creates, however, is that the writer did not foreshadow this, and he actually made multiple other plot holes, as I explained, regarding Zeke and Frieda. Another layer is how Eren in his own head in chapter 130 is literally saying he will kill everyone. Tyler says Eren gained new motivations post-rumbling, but this means the author is just lying to us by showing the reader 130 and 131. 130 and 131 show us his motivations for a full rumbling, yet the final twist of the series is that Eren is not doing that, and instead is giving up. It is just a horrible writing. Imagine Oda has multiple inner monologues with Luffy being the king of the pirates, only for him to do an entirely different and new option. Eren's future memories were a huge writing risk. It took years of patience and dedication. I can only imagine Isayama initially wanting to build intrigue and mystery and excitement with how much Eren has seen and how much he knows. These future memories show different nuances in his characters, also sets up future developments, all the while making Eren a fascinating mystery box. Isayama handled this especially well by not making him see literally everything. Did Eren know about the Warhammer's coil? Did he know he would get hit with a 50 cal? Did he know he would not be able to use the founder immediately in paths? Isayama made sure not to let the future memories affect the conflict and action of the series to still make it fresh and innovative. I have never seen an author go through so much trouble and careful planning just to fall ass backwards and shoot himself in the foot. The future memories are not explained. They conflict with differing points in the story, and functionally, nothing would change if Eren didn't have his future memories. Speaking of the future dictating paths, Tyler says that Eren got future memories because that is what he wanted.
If Eren did not dream of freedom, and if he did not want to destroy the world, he would not have seen memories of the rumbling in the first place.
I partially agree. He saw the rumbling before he willed it into existence, yes. He also gets something wrong that debunks about 40 to 60% of his video. Tyler says Eren did plan to destroy the world.
Also, Eren's dialogue with Historia when he explained his plan to her does not make sense if he knew the full consequences of the rumbling at the time.
Alright, this is me editing right now, and the following part is going to be a little confusing, but if you stick it out till the end, everything will make sense. Just try your best to follow along, and it'll be worth it. The thing is, Eren said this because his future memories say 100% rumbling. Eren says in 131 again that he will kill everyone, and that's what his future memories dictate. Tyler somehow doesn't address this. He says Eren planned 100% rumbling. We see that Eren saw 100% rumbling, and Tyler says he saw it because he wanted it. Then he just magically sidesteps the fact that Eren saw 100% rumbling. The contradiction here is pretty obvious. Tyler's saying that everything he saw in his future memories he saw because he wanted, but he wanted 100% rumbling and he saw it, but then he wasn't able to follow it. So, and he doesn't put an argument against this or anything like that. He just kind of sidesteps it and ignores it. This is the third step of Tyler ignoring things that would deface the fuck out of his arguments. Tyler thinks 80% rumbling was always going to happen in and out of verse. This is wrong to think, as I just explained. He would have never told a story about burying the hate and civilization into dust if he was just going to do 80% rumbling that he saw from his future memories. I feel like I'm talking ad nauseum about this. Eren saw 100% rumbling as proved by 131's monologue, and Tyler saying Eren intended 100%. This memory conflicts with what Tyler also thinks, that 80% was always going to happen. That doesn't make any sense. By Tyler's own words, 80% would have been impossible because he saw 100% in his future memories, and his future memories are what he's wanted. Basically, Tyler is trying to argue, without actually arguing it, that the future changed. but the thing is, we're not even done there. Tyler says that the future can't be changed. That the future will always be the future.
Before anything else, you have to understand that in AOT there is only one timeline, and it is the one that we see. There are no alternate or split timelines. When we talk about Eren in the future, we're talking about the one and only future that is a result of the actions taken in the past.
But as we just went over, that's not the case, and he doesn't even realize that. Like, I mean, how do you not realize? Whatever, bro, whatever. The fact that all of this occurs, like him not realizing it or him just ignoring it, shows an incredibly low IQ and incredibly low media literacy. Like, that's not a joke, that's not an opinion either. All of this was to show how the future memories are so unnecessarily convoluted, it makes every other plot point concerning Eren have these nebulous layers of semen. Isayama turned a fucking brilliant, well-crafted idea into one of the most childishly handled, sloppiest pieces of nonsense I've ever seen ever. Tyler and I disagree on multiple things, obviously, but it isn't his fault that he's wrong. Isayama handled this terribly and forced the disciples to think of anything to defend this garbage. It's the same regarding One Piece fans. They deadass said it would be bad writing if Nami showed interest and developed her dream. Moving on to more diluted nonsense, let's look at what Tyler thinks Eren's goals are. Tyler says Eren's goals before starting the rumbling were experiencing freedom and giving his friends long lives.
Let's go over those goals now. Like I talked about before, his first goal was to experience freedom. For Eren, experiencing freedom meant that the outside world needed to be wiped clean. His second goal was to give his friends long lives, which required protecting the island.
It's almost impossible, it's almost unbelievable that one can only gather those two things from pre-122 Eren. A couple things Tyler misses is obviously protecting Paradise and ending the cycle of hatred. He cares about Paradise. People who act like he doesn't are coped hard trying their hardest to make sense of the ending because it doesn't. Easiest debunk to this idea is that in chapter 90, where Eren in his own head again says he would sacrifice his life if it meant he could do something, which in context refers to Paradise. Even more with the inner monologue on 131, he cared about random fodder Thomas enough to lose a leg over and crash out about. Eren also wants to end the cycle of hatred. Explicit dialogue as well as indirectly confirmed by Zeke and Yelena. Tyler not addressing this is frankly corny. So right then and there, Tyler's got a couple things wrong, but let's get into what he puts down. He says experiencing freedom. To me, it's almost psychotic or incredibly weird that the character who strived for freedom the moment he was born would just settle for a glimpse at what would be quote-unquote freedom. Let me use an example. Griffith was depicted as a child reaching his dream of his own kingdom multiple times. It was only when he became an adult that he saw it with his own eyes. This would be a similar direction for Eren. He is depicted like a child multiple times throughout the manga. It is this rageful, ignorant child who developed into an adult with the mission and enough rage to see it through. Basically, it makes a lot more sense logically and within the medium of manga to have him as a child seeing freedom before he actually attains it as an adult. His entire conversation with Falco emphasizes that there is something beyond the rumbling he's looking for. I find it almost entirely dismissive to say that he just wanted a peek at what freedom was. Pretty obviously, because if he already saw that with his future memories, there'll be no reason to continue going forward. If all he wanted was simply that, then he wouldn't have done it because those are his memories and memories are one-to-one with experience. Other wrong points. So this will be the part where I just say a bunch of things that Tyler gets wrong. This video is so bloated yet terribly paced that I have no choice but to make a miscellaneous section. I know I said 4 points at the beginning, but I had to cut down a lot. This will cover Eren bits, contradictions, Mikasa, and more of his thoughts on the story. Reminder, Tyler thinks this is the only logical place the story could have gone.
Not only is the belief that the ending was retconned entirely incorrect, but the ending we got was the only logical conclusion the story could have had. More specifically, and what I'm going to be focusing on in this video, is that Eren's conclusion was not only logical and natural, but also fantastic, inventive writing that truly elevated his character to a level very few could have foreseen.
Another reminder, we have brushed upon almost 50 plot holes and problems. Another thing that Tyler doesn't really understand is that the story following its logical conclusion implies there's no flaws. Obviously, everything has narrative flaws no matter how trivial. Another aspect of this is how it ignores the obvious foreshadowing for the end of Eren's character, that being Historia and Grisha. The Historia stuff shouldn't be contested in this gigantic year. Eren wanted to give his friends long lives, but he knew Sasha had to go. I don't understand how these people see these plot points and think, yeah, they make sense, and writers should do this. No respectable writer does half of the shit Isayama did. The most egregious point Tyler makes is the whole rumbling simply because people existed and Eren selfishly wanted a blank plane. Absolutely terrible. This is just debunked by reading the story. Making characters essentially evil for evil's sake is a staple of low effort, low quality characters. That's what Tyler swears up and down Eren is though. Just a weirdo killer who was born that way and would and who would destroy and pillage for his own benefit. It is especially odd because Tyler calls Eren an antagonist in this video.
And it's at that point that Eren's role as the protagonist of the series switched to that of antagonist.
Now, this is like 8th grade stuff, but the main character cannot be an antagonist. Like, I mean, sure, Sasuke can be a technical antagonist, but no, Naruto can't be the antagonist of Naruto. It doesn't matter if the main character is bad or good, they are the protagonist. It simply doesn't matter if the antagonist is bad or good morally. If they oppose the main character, they are the antagonist. Ever since I heard this, I went, how could he even record, write, and edit this together? If someone was truly media literate and basically claims to reach enlightenment with Eren's character, how could they completely mischaracterize the role that they play? I thought it was maybe an accident, like, sure, accidents can happen, but I mean, I'm not the smartest guy ever, but I would never call an anti-hero an antagonist. I would never call Walter White the antagonist season 5. I would never call Tony Soprano the antagonist. I would never ever do that because I know the difference between what an antagonist is versus a protagonist. Basically, I thought it was maybe an accident, but then he said it twice.
He did, but he willingly rejected that growth. And that subversion of what was being explored is part of what makes Eren so brilliant and the ideal antagonist of the series.
So how can you write, record, and edit a quote-unquote analysis where you call the protagonist, the main character of the series, an antagonist twice? It is embarrassing to have an analysis in which you just blatantly do not understand basic storytelling properties like this. Another layer I alluded to is within his future memories. Tyler contradicts himself in a very convoluted way. Tyler says earlier that seeing the future doesn't mean anything because the future would have always happened.
But make no mistake, this is the future that would have happened, even if no one had witnessed it. Eren, or anyone else for that matter, could not get around the deterministic nature of their universe by simply not observing the future. In a deterministic universe, even if the future isn't seen, it does not mean that multiple outcomes are possible. No matter what, the future is created by the past, and there is only one future, even if no one knows what that future will be. Eren seeing the future did not lock that future into place, nor did Eren seeing it change that future.
But later in the video, he says Eren was only stopped because he saw that future.
So long as it meant killing his friends, Eren could not complete the rumbling, and because of his unwillingness to kill them, his defeat was assured. But if Eren didn't know he would be stopped, he would have completed the rumbling.
He literally says Eren would have completed the rumbling if he didn't see the future again. This completely contradicts his views on determinism and his take on how the future memories work. Getting into the nitty gritty of the video just reveals how Isayama created such a fucking mess people actually think is clean. What did Junior Soprano say?
Some people are so far behind in a race that they actually believe they're leading. Yeah, that's cute.
Tyler again contradicts himself with how he thinks the AOT world works. He said that there is only one timeline and one future. Then, toward the end, when talking about Mikasa, he says how Eren showed her an alternative reality.
Showed Mikasa an alternate reality, one in which they abandoned everything to spend their remaining time together.
Some people argue the semantics, but another reality is literally the same thing as another timeline, especially in the context of AOT. The final note to make for this video is that it's honestly exhausting. Writing this is literally draining my fucking soul. The biggest problem is that he substantiates nonsense with more nonsense and it becomes the biggest Brandolini's law ever. It takes infinitely more time and energy to prove his bitch ass wrong than it takes to say his bitch ass sentiments. The video looks good and has pretty good audio, but outside of that, it's paced like a snail with no chapters and has flaccid music and is objectively wrong during so many points. And finally, fuck the voice acting. That shit is horrible and it lags the fuck out of the video for no reason. Fuck that guy.
Let him go.
Discussion and arguments is the height of discourse. People need to interact with other people simply to prove themselves and what they believe. As a result of this incredibly terrible finale, several different arguments have come out to defend and admonish some of these results. Not too much regarding the videos I've just debunked, but several arbitrary, not immediately plot relevant details. In this section, we'll go over as many arguments I have personally, mind you, personally interacted with to show how there are almost no excuses for this ending. For some of these, I will have proof of them, but for a lot, I will just ask you to trust me that it was said to me. Some of these are just egregious takes that need to be dismantled and never brought up again in the light of day. Number 1. Eren never changed. This idea is so flaccid, and whenever people say it, it is almost always garbage. Eren fundamentally, like his ideals in which he believes, yeah, sure, they never change. He believes people are free from the moment they're born, yes. However, Eren has gone through a fuck ton of changes and shifts. His development with Historia, his development with Reiner. He acknowledges the world and what it does to people and what happens to those victims. Even more, he once hated the Titans so much he couldn't stand it, but now looks at them with pity and compassion. Eren has changed and is not a young, ignorant, whiny kid, and rarely has been. Number 2. Paradis the most technologically advanced after the rumbling. This is, I think, objectively wrong. Just logically, Eren left 20% of the world alive. Let's say the outside world has 1 billion people just for the sake of the argument. We can also substantiate this with Marley having 1 million foot soldiers alone, as well as Paradis having 1 million before the walls broke. The outside world having 1 billion people would mean 20% of that would be 200 million people if my math is correct. 200 million people would act like the lion to 1 million people on Paradis. Even still, Kiyomi said the outside world is 100 years more advanced than Paradis. So how the fuck could 1 million people 100 years behind be more advanced than 200 million people with technology that already gaps the island? Saying it out loud makes the original comment even more egregious. Even in the canon ending of the manga, the outside world seems to have advanced technologically after 3 years. This sentiment is just an arbitrary claim to make Eren's plan seem less terrible. Overall, this claim is terrible and asinine. Number 3. It's not a retcon since it wasn't written yet. This is one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. Someone on Reddit actually said the ending wasn't retconned because it wasn't written yet. I'm not even going to speak too much on this. We say Eren's character was retconned because his love for Mikasa, Ymir being in love with the king, and him planning to do 80%. These developments were not at all alluded to within the narrative. These things were not even 1% predictable because they were not in the original vision or in the past chapters at all. It is a retcon because Eren says in his head multiple times how he will kill the entire world, only for that to never be the case according to 139. Please look at this clip from George R.R. Martin concerning mysteries in a grand narrative and then try to tell me it's not a retcon since it wasn't written yet.
I can't let that be. I'll have to change it. I'll have to go in a different direction. And I think some writers do that. And I think that's always a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, if you've planned your book that the butler did it, and then you read on the internet, someone has figured out that the butler did it, and you suddenly change in midstream and it was the chambermaid who did it, then you screw up the whole book because you get this foreshadowing early on and you've got these little clues you planted, now they're dead ends and you have to introduce other clues and you're retconning, it's a mess. So
you deadass sound stupid. Number 4, nobody forgave Annie. Wrong. Number 5, Eren couldn't save Hannes because he's an idiot. This guy is normally an idiot, and even though this is partially a joke, it just speaks on the absurdity of defenses these guys will make up. Number 6, Civil War nuked Paradis. This sentiment is only believed to save face when regarding Eren's terrible plan and Isayama's terrible writing. This is just a hopeless cope that is also the height of anti-media literacy. Isayama told us multiple times exactly, precisely, what was gonna happen if the rumbling was stopped. Instead, people want to jump through hoops like a fucking bear to believe that Civil War took Paradis off the map, even though Paradis didn't go through a single civil war for the first 100 years of his lifespan, which is a fairly disingenuous claim since, sure, but also, civil wars don't leave buildings abandoned to decay and rot. You would actually be a brain that doesn't even, like, bro. Number 7, the rumbling was a necessity. Look at the panels leading up to the rumbling and tell me it wasn't a necessity. The rumbling wasn't a necessity, guys. Eren just got his head blown off for completely different reasons. The final arc didn't have any flaws but could be better. The final arc has a trillion flaws, and this is even the case with Ymir alone. However, it is simply contradictory to say the execution could have been better, but there's no flaws. If the execution could have been better, then That right there is a flaw. I guess it just glazed until you drop, apparently. His friends cry for him because they don't want to see him as a genocidal freak. This sentiment is so retarded it's low-key funny. So after hearing and seeing 80% of the world has just been deleted, they don't want to see him as evil, so they cry for him despite that. It's just a massive headcanon to try to seem like the ending is cohesive. Just to give a real argument, the reason why this doesn't work is because of the context. John rationalized in like the first 20 seconds of the rumbling to the rest of the alliance in chapter 124 that Eren was doing the rumbling for them. So hearing it again that Eren was again doing the rumbling for them shouldn't move anybody. Considering that we didn't see John, Connie's, or Reiner's conversations with Eren, we can't assume anything, but we can easily surmise the message of the conversations through the alliance. And he says that he told us to live long lives, meaning he likely repeated the sentiment to others. This isn't an assumption, this is just kind of just logically coherent. So there's no 4D chess moments of the alliance, they're just celebrating Eren's legacy as a genocidal maniac. So no, it's not well done character writing. They just cry for him because Isayama manipulated the story in order to change your perception of Eren into a good guy, as he fucking admitted.
Good guy?
Eren's character was assassinated until he stopped the rumbling. Yes, you heard that correctly. Yes, this guy's retarded. Yes, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Not only is this heavy victim blaming because Eren was forced to, I think this comment truly reduces every thematic arc and through line to the most artificial variant it responds to. AOT is not about never giving up like some Naruto fucking plotline. AOT was about humanity's last stand against impossible odds. Ironically, it was Eren who convinced a lot of people on this never give up sentiment. This comment portrays Eren in a bad light when it is actually the scouts who should take his place. The scouts are the ones who came up empty-handed and were completely reactionary. The scouts literally believe they're as responsible for the rumbling as Eren. Under this premise, wouldn't the scouts be the one who gave up while Eren didn't? Eren never gave up looking for solutions on how to save the island. He conspired with Zeke, someone he opposes in every sense of the word, just to avoid sacrificing his friends and island. As Armin said, he needed to follow along with Elena or else something worse could have happened. Eren was someone who sacrificed a lot to make a lot more happen. This is why the ending is so terrible. All of this was made meaningless. Number 11, Historia is a slave. Definitely the weirdest thing I've ever heard. So many mikasa retards on the internet are so adamant on destroying everything preciously. What the fuck did I mean to write here? Previously. So many mikasa retards on the internet are so adamant on destroying everything previously established in the story in order to justify this development. Number 1, this is objectively wrong. Historia rejected being a slave twice. And number 2, Historia's entire character is a rejection of the toxicity and slavery within other relationships. Grisha and Dina, as they did not give a fuck about Zeke, and Historia cared very much about her child, and Ymir and King Fritz. Historia was not a baby-making machine who lived to be a weapon. This is why when people say that Historia is irrelevant or is not important or is a slave somehow, it makes no sense. You would literally need to ignore everything, and I mean literally everything, to convince yourself that she's a slave, then hit your head with a hammer 6 times an hour to spread this nonsense on the internet. This is the complete asinine take, which makes sense because these are the same delusional people.
I don't wish the best. I might say that, hey, stay blessed. Boy, fuck you.
Alright, so this is my analysis on a somewhat 223 page long Mikasa and Eren analysis document, whatever. As I have spent so long explaining, Mikasa and Eren are garbage characters and their relationship was shoehorned into the final chapters. Eren never gave a fuck about Mikasa. Mikasa needed to understand this and move away from Eren. This is all evidence from chapter 130 alone. Eren didn't view her actions as normal and rejected her quote-unquote love. Eren was also leaving her behind in pursuit of his freedom. These are just facts presented by the story story, and if you disagree, I promise you'll never win an actual debate with that position. Getting into the document, I can tell English is not this person's first language. The sentence structure is off and the grammar is awkward. They're also super annoyed by people hating on this relationship. They spend a couple sentences just talking about, guys, it's canon, not a retcon, accept reality, not interpretation. This Word document is 223 pages and they spend a couple pages deadass talking about how it's not a retcon and it's natural. And it's not an interpretation. Like, this is a real sentence from the Word doc, by the way. The same day after this terrible tragedy, a young boy with a scarf around his neck accompanies his father to his consultation so that he can meet little Ackerman. Again, not real. It is horrible writing by itself. I put myself through literal hell reading this. He understood why she protects him so much, why she behaved like that. Large portion of these talking points are nonsensical headcanons that simply ignore the narrative. There will also be these little weird fake poetic moments that get immediately squandered because they read like a child wrote it. When they talk about chapter 50's scarf scene, they mention ridiculous sentiments. They say Eren tests her in the relationship by asking to get a new scarf to see how much it means. What the fuck? Like, what? This is a massive headcanon that I shouldn't have to explain. This is also anime only, as I have found zero evidence of this manga and I know the manga pretty well. Even more, this is debunked by later things within the manga. They also say that Historia's moment in chapter 66 only reminded him of the powerful moment between him and Mikasa. Things like this continuously occur throughout several pages of the document. For God's sakes, they literally say that Mikasa and Eren don't view each other as siblings, even as kids. What? All this, what does she mean to me? And, oh golly, Mikasa sure does get my jollies up. I sure hope to understand my complex feelings and impulsive behaviors are immediately cancelled when you look at chapter 70. Eren hears Marlowe's situation and immediately thinks that there's nothing wrong with it despite Hitch being clearly interested, meaning Eren is completely brain dead when it comes to the most overt hint ever. So all this detail-orientated, nuanced, little emotionally complex development or whatever's being talked about in the fucking pre-time skip of the document is immediately over since Eren doesn't understand any of that. This would also likely confirm that chapter 50's romanticism could not have been mutual, as Eren literally cannot pick up on the romance of women to him. Even more than this, a lot of interviews from a non-lobotomized Isayama directly destroy this position. Ironically, they refer to one of these interviews. More pertinently though, they use a lot of statements from VAs, Isayama, and etc. This person is so weirdly concerned with interviews and the like, they literally use some weird translation where Mikasa refers to Grisha and Carla as aunt and uncle to diminish the incest relationship between Mikasa and Eren. Some bonus trivia, this person literally says Mikasa acts castrating towards Eren. This person also refers to a special interview.
In 2015, in Gekken Shingeki no Kyojin, Volume 3, Isayama states, "For Eren, rather than a lover, Mikasa's presence is more like a mother to him. The love towards a mother is considered valuable. However, at the same time, there are annoying parts as well. Just like towards one's actual mother, Eren will start to grow up when he becomes independent from Mikasa. I might draw this scene one day."
What this person fails to mention, which almost feels deliberate as an attempt to make it fit, is the date of the interview. Because the date is so ahead of many moments and they already conceded that Mikasa is a motherly figure to Eren at the beginning, it means most of the development that this person mentions should be immediately thrown out the fucking window.
Eren as a brother. So if in 2013 that Isayama also believed that he should have drawn them kissing, then this would mean that he would have drawn Eren kissing his mother figure.
One thing you'll notice with these guys is a complete lowball of Historia. Look at what this look at this quote. I literally have it in the fucking Historia was. Look at this fucking paragraph, bro. Historia was shown to be strong and courageous thanks to the memories of Ymir and Frida's words. Ymir, for whom she developed deep affection in the same way he found strength, courage, and will to live thanks to the words of Mikasa while he was practically in the same state. Is that a colon? Psychologically destroyed and a desire to die, comma, give up. Or how Mikasa regained the desire to live and be strong thanks to Eren's memories. Oh my god. Saying things like Historia reminded Eren of Mikasa and Mikasa inspired Eren with the will to fight while Historia didn't is very illiterate, especially because Eren mentions Historia in the moment a million times over while the scarf scene gets radio silent indefinitely. They say that Eren and Mikasa showcase their development with their eyes and their gaze. The evidence they show for this is literally within an internal monologue that is about Historia. It's saying, guys, they communicate their love through their looks, even though the looks are immediately followed by thoughts about another woman. Completely delusional. More delusional behavior veered his nasty head in the confession scene, quote unquote, in 123. Despite it not being a confession, I'm sure this person views it that way. They base a large personal conflict for Eren with him thinking Mikasa is controlled because of the argument genes. Eren lied to Mikasa while he said this though, and he only thought of it as a theory when positing it to Zeke, meaning this whole thing is especially odd. The final thing I will say regarding this document is the Ymir stuff. This person is admitting that Eren was forced to follow fate and ordering the past and stuff, all because Ymir told him, all to reach her end. This is a very odd position to take. It is currently 5 AM with me reading and writing these lines for the document, and this guy just said Ymir waited 2,000 years for Eren just for him to pass all of that on to Mikasa. This guy is retarded. The biggest issue with this document, besides the clear lack of understanding of the English language, is the argumentation. An analysis is an argument. You state your premise and develop that premise through arguments substantiated by the story. Even in the Invaderzz video, he makes a fuck ton of arguments. They're just not good. This document makes arguments that are either too intimately connected to the story or not at all an argument. Saying things like Eren was a slave who transferred his narrative importance to Mikasa as an act of love is an argument that is literally just a story being told. Saying something like Eren loved Mikasa but didn't understand it is a bad argument that isn't substantiated by the story. I asked myself going into this document, where is the proof for Eren loving Mikasa? Where is that in the story? But this guy just says they're in love because they are and the story says so. Basically, an argument that is completely fucking circular. And I won't lie to you guys. I won't lie and say that I read through all of this completely critically, completely thoroughly, and completely naturally. Whenever I read something that was a little incoherent, I just kind of skipped past it. I won't lie. But that's not my fault. It's not my job to correct typos and grammar mistakes and terrible writing in a written analysis. If the foundation of your analysis is so rotten to its core, how could you ever hope to do something meaningful with it? So in conclusion, we have terrible points that are debunked by the story and the creator, arguments that are terrible across many facets, in a document that cannot actually be read coherently. This is by far the worst piece of AOT media I've ever engaged with in my life. If anyone uses the parallel between chapter 1 and 138 to justify anything, just remember Eren should have been asking why she's a decade younger, not just her hair length. Bonus little section thing, one time I was arguing with this one woman on Reddit. I'll try to find the screenshots, and I rightfully said that the story doesn't present any other option than genocide, and she responded, hey man, I understand it's possible your brain can't think of beyond what's presented to you, but that's not the case for everyone. And if you guys didn't just catch that, the woman is saying that my brain doesn't headcanon alternatives to the story. She is conceding that genocide was the only option presented, but is instead going, no, we can headcanon rationalize other things. Like, I would say the jokes write themselves, but it's just fucking embarrassing, bro. I don't know if I'm peeking into the mic. I don't know if you guys even heard that, but thank you for making it to the end. This has been an exhausting deep dive into this terrible series. By now, we should all be entirely familiar with the nonsense Isayama has written. The plot holes cannot be filled unless you have an entirely different ending. Isayama knows this and doesn't choose to give the different ending, instead sticking to shallow waters. Any competent writer would fix the gaping plot hole of Mikasa getting back to Paradise. Isayama flat out turned his brain off for the final chapter of the story. The evidence for this is literally out of this world. He was so busy by trying to appeal to everyone and anyone that read his story, he made this incredible mess. Isayama is extremely insecure as a writer. He felt he did not do a good job with the Uprising arc, so he made the anime expedite and skip over several parts. What we see with this story is that an author needs to stay loyal to their audience. They have a symbiotic relationship. You cannot betray that bond to do whatever you want without any sense of setup and payoff. However, that is exactly what Isayama did. Instead of introducing any new facet to the story, he just failed backwards and convinced people that everything was happening fine. He convinced so many people that falling is actually flying. Again, what did Junior Soprano say?
Some people are so far behind in a race that they actually believe they're leading.
There are way too many narrative, objective, and categorical flaws within this ending. There is a great video series by this unknown channel called Ninjask that covers all types of flaws from nitpicks to major plot holes to general writing issues within the anime alone. AOT is a flawed series even without the garbage ending. As long as what I'm getting makes sense and is generally coherent, I can forgive many mistakes and plot holes. For God's sakes, bro, I showed The Sopranos like 50 million times. This ending though has way too many problems to be unintentional. Anyone, and I mean anyone, with the sensible knowledge of storytelling cannot have done this by accident. Isayama knew what he was doing. He knew the writing didn't make sense. Isayama asked himself, why is Mikasa the chosen one? And answered the question with, I don't know, because he could not bridge his congruity. He finished the final chapter on Eren's birthday, minus 8 pages because he wanted to do all this. To me, it seems all too apparent that Isayama did all this on purpose to appeal to the most surface of surface level fans. Hanji's death was the start of the main character starting to drop like flies, and that pushback made Isayama overtune the story. Isayama even said he had no way of making Armin solve the conflict. If the hero couldn't solve anything, then don't write the conflict or don't write him to be the hero. Isayama chose both, which is why the series is so dog shit. I already talked about this at length, but Isayama wanting Armin to be the hero without actually writing it spawned a dilemma between Isayama and his pen. Therefore, he had to start gifting Armin things. He was gifted a way to stop the rumbling by making Zeke's character falsified and incomplete. He was gifted a way out of path. He was gifted a way to quell Mueller. Isayama wants Armin to be the hero of humanity, like Eren said in RTS, but refused to put the work in to do so. For God's sakes, man, Levi and Zeke were talking about how they don't have time to be lollygagging, and immediately after, we see Armin wasting time touching Annie. Mind you, this is the same chapter Eren breaks out of jail and Peaks infiltrates the island. This chapter literally screams at you in the boldest letters possible, we don't have time to waste, but the future hero of humanity is only in this chapter to be shown wasting time. By now, we have seen why this ending is terrible. There are way too many incongruities to actually bridge a coherent narrative. This is evidently the main problem. There's too many problems that don't actually fit with anything the story presents or says. The best way I've heard anyone describe this is this. This is not a good idea with bad or rushed execution. It's a bad, unfitting idea, executed to the best it could be. It is essentially a pig in a dress rather than Billie Eilish in a trash bag. The most anyone can do to get rid of the nonsense we have permeating the series is to just move on. A&R is just good ideas with amateur execution, and AoE is a terrible idea in general that can never happen because Isayama is an insecure child. The defenders of this ending are in a similar situation. They're simply ignorant to how deep the rabbit hole goes. I guarantee almost no one has thought about the wall tie-ins themselves being a plot hole like the way I have. Isayama wrote the lighthearted Avengers, then immediately jumped into the dark fantasy tragedy of 130 and 131, just to rope the Avengers back into it with 132. Whenever something ends well, people praise the ending unanimously as the peak of the series. Isayama wiped away everything in his story and had the balls to claim it was planned from the beginning. Literally a hack writer who should never pick up the pen again. Anyway, that is all. Thank you for watching, and thank you Isayama for taking this dig. Alright, so this is the end of the video. I already put everything together and I just want to freestyle for a bit. I dislike Attack on Titan, if you couldn't tell, and this has been my longest video so far, and it's taken me about 2 months to make, and that's kind of crazy. And if you want to see more Attack on Titan content, sorry, but I don't really want to make any more. I feel like this was like the biggest thing one can like see, unless I just make more plot holes in the pre-time skip or even longer video discussing every single flaw in the series from volume 1. But that seems a little strenuous, and I'm not going to do that within like the next 6 months. I said I would make some Hunter x Hunter content, and I have a pretty have a good idea on who I should make it on, because I have a great idea actually. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. I hope it wasn't too loud. I tried to make the audio louder than usual because I thought it would be a little more in line with how I wanted the tone in the video to come across, very direct, assertive, and the like. It was way louder, and I had to tune this shit down. But I wanted it to be definitely loud rather than quiet, because I don't want to be saying this shit is terrible while it being like this shit is terrible. I don't want it to be like, you know, all quiet and everything. And I hope the gaming clips I have, wherever the fuck they are, hope they're actually pretty good. I haven't been playing a lot recently because I've been drunk. I literally, I pulled 2 all-nighters back to back editing this video. Oh my god, it was fun, but oh my god, I'm so glad this shit is over. And yeah, the OST is kicking. Can you feel? Oh, never mind. Okay, but OST is kicking, and yeah, I might include like a little blooper section at the end because I have 2 different sort of things I want to mention. One of them is essentially, I forgot the other one actually. I don't remember what it was. It might just be one, but can you feel it? But I forgot one of them, but the other one was essentially saying how people who have royal blood should be in every single Eldian, and I guess I'll just explain it now since we're here. So we see that the subjects of Ymir, the quote-unquote Eldians, the subjects of Ymir are simply just Ymir's children. Mikasa states as much in the ending. So the fact that Ymir's children have royal blood, so every subject of Ymir came from royal blood. And the thing is, right, how it's never explained how it's kept quote-unquote pure. Historia's mother didn't have royal blood, but then Historia's child would have royal blood, as everyone says. It's never brought up on how there might be some genetic offspring, whatever. And it's like, it's weird too, because as royal blood gets seemingly more and more rare, as royal blood gets seemingly more and more rare, no one brings up like incest or eugenics or anything like that. It's just kind of like, yeah, you have royal blood because your parent was like that, but that doesn't make any sense because under that premise, every subject in Ymir should have royal blood. I'm sure there's a realer, more scientific explanation behind that, but for me, that's what it is. And yeah, also I hope this video doesn't have any major fucking flaws, because oh my god, this exporting is gonna take forever. But yeah, whatever. Thank you for watching all that stuff, and if you've been listening this far, you're kind of crazy, and I hope the gaming clips are really satiating. So yeah, thanks, and I'll catch you probably in like 2-3 weeks with a Hunter x Hunter video, if I can write it. I'm not gonna lie, writing about Hunter x Hunter gonna take my soul, but whatever. It might be Sopranos. Not gonna lie, Sopranos video will probably never come out. I'm not gonna lie, it will never come out unless I like spend like $200 to download all the material to edit it. But yeah, thanks. See you around. Arigato. All that shit.